Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto stops chasing Sasuke. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. Sasuke should have just stayed in bed. The morning was quickly rolling downhill. First, his alarm went off an hour late because he'd forgotten to set it. Then he'd knocked the damn thing off its ledge before he could shut it off. And then he'd had to climb down out of bed and root around on the floor to find it. He finally managed to move his desk, reach the alarm and shut the damn thing off, but not without ramming his head on the underside of the furniture when straightening up. Muttering curses under his breath, Sasuke threw on some clothes, black shirt, black pants. It suited his mood, and gathered his books. He made it about halfway down the hall before realizing that he left his homework. After the second trip, he managed to make it outside. And it was pouring rain. Hooray! It was with a black scowl on his face that a sopping wet Sasuke finally blew into his 9 a.m. class with about 3 seconds to spare. Readjusting his books under his arm, which, thankfully, had fit under his jacket, so they weren't soaked through, Sasuke swiped at his hair and glanced around. Oi, Sasuke teme, shoulders tensing at the obnoxious shout, Sasuke turned and glared irritably at the blonde waving enthusiastically. Trust that idiot to insult him with a smile on his face. Glowering, Sasuke made his way to the third row of stadium-style seats in the lecture hall, slogged his way down the row, and tossed his books down on the table before him. Naruto glanced at Sasuke's condition and snickered. What happened to you? Get caught in a tidal wave? Shut it, Sasuke replied irritably. Seating himself next to the tall blonde, Sasuke sent a glare in the boy's direction. Do you have to shout my name like that every morning? Grinning, Naruto lifted a hand and ruffled Sasuke's wet hair. He was unperturbed when his hand was slapped away. It's the face you make, man. It's like you don't know whether to strangle me or wave back. He chuckled, giving Sasuke a fox grin. It's part of the reason I always embarrass you from a distance. Gives you fewer options. Sasuke sent him an icy look, but he said nothing. Folding his arms on the table, he glared at the front of the room. The teacher's late. It figures. I rushed all this way for nothing. Bad morning? Sasuke glanced at him and lifted a brow. Smirking, Naruto leaned back in his chair and stretched his legs out before him. You always have this black cloud of doom hovering over you when you're having a rough morning. He glanced to his other side. Maybe you should sit further away. I don't want to get hit with a lightning bolt. Ha, ha. Sasuke continued drilling holes in the blackboard with his gaze. Where the hell was the professor? Amused with Sasuke's attitude, Naruto lightly smacked the Uchiha's shoulder with the back of his hand. So, did you do the homework? Sasuke simply gave him a dry look. Oh yeah, I forgot. His Highness Prince Perfect always does the homework. Naruto sniggered as Sasuke narrowed his eyes. Can I see it? I want to check my answers. Grudgingly, Sasuke pulled the sheet out of his notebook and handed it over. Naruto snatched it out of his hands with a flare, pulled out a second sheet of paper, and began scribbling faster than Sasuke would have given him credit for. Hey, wait a minute. Damn it, Naruto, I didn't say you could copy it. Scowling, Sasuke swiped the sheet out of the blonde's grip. The fact that Naruto simply leaned back, smiled sheepishly and ran a hand through his unruly hair didn't improve Sasuke's mood. Do your own damn homework. But you're smarter than me. Naruto whined. Clasping both hands in front of him, Naruto gave Sasuke his best beaten puppy look, which probably would have had more effect if he were a foot shorter and had about 50 less pounds of muscle. Please, Sasuke-kun? No. Naruto started sniffling pathetically. I said no. Sighing, Naruto slumped in his chair and crossed his arms over his broad chest. You're no fun, Sasuke. You're an idiot, jerk, moron, asswipe. Naruto grinned at the cold look he received for that one. Before Sasuke could open his mouth to retaliate, the professor finally strolled into the lecture hall. The pale boy reluctantly faced forward, feeling Naruto's triumphant grin burn into his side. Sorry I'm late, everyone. My boat had a leak in it this morning, and I had to patch it before coming to class. Half the class rolled their eyes at the lazily delivered comment, but the other half glanced outside. With the amount of rain coming down, his excuse wasn't entirely illogical. Now that I'm here, you can pass your homework up. Sasuke passed his over to the right, then turned to smirk at Naruto. The blonde blinked at him, then smiled brightly. Oh yeah, I completely forgot. Opening his binder, he pulled out a sheet of paper. I did it last night. God, I hate you. As Sasuke passed the offending paper to the side, he glowered at the grinning blonde idiot beside him. Who would have guessed that someone so abrasive and immature would end up being Sasuke's closest friend? They'd hated each other in elementary school, had developed grudging respect for each other in middle school, and after a not-so-brief falling out when they were 13, the two had grown almost abnormally, in Sasuke's eyes, close. Hell, they'd followed each other to college, hadn't they? Throughout the years, it had been more fun, as Naruto put it, to act like they hated each other more than to be friendly, but lately Naruto seemed to have dropped the habit. Instead of the glares and impromptu brawls on campus, Naruto had relaxed and settled for mildly harassing Sasuke in public. The sudden change sometimes left Sasuke at a loss. But what confused him more was how easily they'd settled into the new routine. You'd think that two guys who hated each other's guts would dislike each other more. As the professor blabbered on about early European history, which Sasuke had no interest in, Sasuke found his mind wandering. It had been easy to put Naruto out of his mind when they were enemies, or at least acting like enemies. But now that they were friendly in public, Sasuke was finding it surprisingly hard to ignore the blonde. Was it just a side effect of actually behaving like the friends they'd probably always been? Or was it more? A soft thump and a sudden weight on his shoulder startled Sasuke from his thoughts. Spiky blonde hair tickled his face as he turned to give Naruto an exasperated glance. "Oi, Dobi, get off me." Naruto simply mumbled under his breath and shifted, pressing his face into Sasuke's neck. Sighing, the blonde seemed to fall into a deeper sleep. A slow blush spread across Sasuke's cheeks as Naruto's warm breath ghosted over his skin. Looking away, Sasuke shifted uncomfortably. I should probably push him away, but... He stole a glance at Naruto, unconsciously taking in the taller boy's defined, toned body and handsome face. Well, handsome minus that stream of drool. I swear, if that gets on my shirt, while the blonde slept. His heart started pounding as Naruto decided to make himself more comfortable, tossing one arm about Sasuke's waist. Embarrassed, Sasuke tried to pry Naruto's arm loose. I set off. Use someone else as your pillow, he hissed. Naruto didn't respond, though he absent-mindedly fought Sasuke's attempts to remove him. Finally managing to remove the blonde's arm, Sasuke dropped the appendage to push the boy off him. Entirely by accident, Naruto's hand dropped right onto Sasuke's crotch. Jumping, Sasuke stared down at his lap for a second before flushing scarlet and violently throwing Naruto off him. Jesus! What the hell was that? Sasuke shifted away, desperately trying to will his blush away. Startled awake by his back hitting his chair, Naruto blinked owlishly at him. He took in Sasuke's blush with confusion. What's the matter with you? Your face is red. Shut up. But, I said, shut up. Sheesh. Miffed, Naruto slumped into his chair. What did I do to you, you insensitive creep? Sasuke decided to ignore that question. The moment class was over, Sasuke strode out of the room and into the hallway, heedless of Naruto's calls. A frown marring his face, Sasuke tuned out the rest of the annoying public. Why did I react to Naruto the way I did? He wasn't even awake, so it's not like he touched me, there, on purpose. Why was I so embarrassed? A worry line creased his forehead. His reaction today wasn't his only strange response to Naruto's presence. He seemed to have a habit of blushing like a schoolgirl. Well, a faint hint of pink on his cheeks. He was an Uchiha, after all, whenever Naruto accidentally brushed against him or touched him. Ironically, Sasuke hadn't had a problem when they were fighting, but now. There must be something wrong with me, he concluded. Do I have a fever? Before he could even consider testing this theory, a heavy arm dropped onto his shoulders. Not losing even a shred of composure, Sasuke glanced coolly at Naruto. Why'd you run off like that, bonehead? Naruto glared at Sasuke. You didn't even let me ask if you want to work together. Sasuke lifted an eyebrow, trying to ignore the press of Naruto's muscled arm about his shoulders. Work together on what? The blonde gave him an incredulous look. You actually weren't paying attention? That's a first. Sasuke looked away, slightly embarrassed. Like hell I'll tell him that I wasn't paying attention because I was trying to ignore him, and failing. Well, anyway, Naruto continued, Dr. Hitaki said that we have to break up into groups and do a report on some famous European explorer. Are we going to work together? Sasuke couldn't resist smirking. Well, just because you don't have any other friends. Naruto whacked him upside the head. Smartass. Sasuke-kun. Sasuke-kun. A chill raced down Sasuke's spine while Naruto calmly glanced over his shoulder. Looks like your horde is coming. I hadn't noticed. Sasuke grit his teeth. Being hounded by his fan club was not going to improve his already sour day, especially with their gleeful usage of the Japanese suffix. They had leapt on that when they found out that Sasuke was half Japanese. Naruto had decided to pick up the more colorful tags instead. When Naruto started to remove his arm from Sasuke's shoulder, Sasuke glared at him. You are not leaving me to deal with them alone. Naruto gave him a cheeky smile. Hey, they're your harem. Just let them service you and be on their way. You have no sense of decency, do you? Nope, none at all. The hair on the back of Sasuke's neck began to tingle as he sensed the pack of females behind him. Regardless of how sweetly they may be smiling right now, he could still sense their real appearances. Drooling, clawing, maniacally grinning she-demons swarming en masse behind him. A prickle of desperation seized him. He hated to ask for help, but a quick glance behind him showed an even larger horde than he was used to. As Naruto began to move away, Sasuke grabbed his arm and hissed in his ear. Get me out of this, and I'll buy you ramen. Instantly coming to attention, Naruto turned back to Sasuke and smiled evilly. Make it a month's worth, and you have yourself a deal. A month? No way in hell. Ya nay. Have fun with the feeding frenzy. Naruto started to walk off again, chants of Sasuke-kun floating about him. Gritting his teeth, Sasuke tightened his grip on Naruto's arm. A week's worth of ramen. Final offer. Naruto thought about that for a long moment, his hand stroking his chin. Sasuke had to use almost all of his self-control to keep from reaching up and strangling him. Damn you, Naruto. Just do it. Reaching a decision, Naruto cast a sunny smile on Sasuke. Deal. Just as the horde finally decided to ignore Naruto's presence and began to bombard Sasuke with coups, calls and phone numbers, Naruto turned to face them and smiled charmingly. Sasuke lifted an eyebrow. I wonder what he's going to do to get rid of them. I'm sorry ladies, but Sasuke-kun, he sang the suffix in a high pitch, clasping his hands together and batting his eyes, and I have plans. You'll have to catch him later. With that, Naruto turned and faced Sasuke, an expectant grin on his face. Sasuke stared up at him in confusion, growing uneasy as the grin grew and Naruto's eyes narrowed mischievously. Maybe this was a bad idea. Before he or the fangirls could question Naruto, the blonde squatted down in front of Sasuke, wrapped an arm about the boy's legs, pressed his shoulder against Sasuke's stomach, and hoisted him into the air. A shocked, speechless Sasuke flopped over his shoulder. Naruto turned and waved cheerfully at the crowd. See you later, ladies. He winked at one shocked girl up front. Especially you. Leaving everyone with their jaws hanging open, Naruto walked off. Seconds later, a familiar voice let out a very unfamiliar screech. You damn doby. Put me down now. Oh come on, you know you love it. I'll kill you, I swear to fucking God. Ah, come on, are you still mad at me? Naruto, cheerfully sporting a black eye, slurped down some of his promised ramen. Sasuke simply continued to glare daggers at him from over his folded hands. Rolling his good eye, Naruto pointed his chopsticks at the pale boy. Some thanks I get for saving your ass. Next time I'll just let them have their way with you. Suppressing a shudder at the images that conjured up, Sasuke began twisting his eyeball daggers into Naruto's chest. Of all the ways to get us out of there, you had to choose that? Naruto smirked. Well, I could have kissed you, he stated flippantly. That would have worked just as well. Sasuke froze, his eyes widening slightly. He could have kissed me? His heart started pounding at the mental image. The thought of Naruto running his fingers through Sasuke's hair, fisting his hand at the nape of Sasuke's neck and just devouring the slimmer boy's mouth. Swallowing hard, Sasuke fought down a blush. Before Sasuke could gather his composure, Naruto leaned forward and smiled mischievously. Unless that's what you actually wanted, Sasuke-kun. He drawled Sasuke's name, eyes glinting dangerously. Straightening, Sasuke repaired his glare of death. Try it and I'll kill you. God, don't try it, I'm begging you. I don't have a clue how I'll react. Keeping a straight, icy face, Sasuke trampled down the inkling that he might know exactly what he'd do. Laughing, Naruto leaned back in his seat. Relax, Uchiha, I was just teasing you. It'd take something drastic for me to kiss you. Drastic? Unsure of how to react to that, Sasuke simply grunted and glanced away. He listened to Naruto smack and slurp down his noodles before glancing back at him. Apparently, the blonde was completely undisturbed by the conversation and its implications. Sasuke couldn't completely fight off a small smile while watching Naruto's simple-minded enjoyment of the food. Well, he certainly has his priorities in order. But still, what did he mean by drastic? Naruto made a sudden noise around his mouthful of food, glancing up. He started to speak incoherently, stopped, swallowed, and tried again. So when are we going to meet? Sasuke let out a soft huff of air. Well, we could meet tomorrow at the library. I don't have any classes afternoon. Sounds good. Taking a swig of his soda, Naruto smirked. I don't have any classes that I care to go to afternoon. The Uchiha shook his head. How you managed to get away with that? And still get good grades? Grinning, he leaned back and placed his hands behind his head. It's all about the charm. Snorting, Sasuke leaned back in his seat as well. I'm sure, he replied dryly. He glanced at his watch, winced, and stood, tossing some money on the table. I have a class in 20 minutes. Yeah. Naruto lifted a hand and waved lightly, but it wasn't until Sasuke had reached the restaurant's door that he chose to speak. Oi, Sasuke. Just so you know. He smiled sweetly. It's always a pleasure to sweep you off your feet. Smoke curled in the air of the dimly lit room as Sasuke busied himself with wiping a table clean. Waving irritably at a particularly large cloud of smoke as it settled about his face, Sasuke straightened and glowered around the dark room. Goths, emos and punks milled about the tables, smoking and drinking while bemoaning the sad fate of the world. One guy in black leather pants, a tattooed-on shirt, and round sunglasses recited a poem on the small stage while his buddy tapped a set of bongos. Why the hell did Sasuke choose to work at a place like this? Sighing, he moved to the next table and began to clear it, for once wishing that he had the standard black apron to cover his outfit. Just because he happened to fit the cafe's dress code today, it didn't mean that he wanted to get crap all over his clothes. It was annoying, but he preferred to have his own money to spend rather than live off the life insurance for his parents. It seemed more respectful. And besides, the atmosphere actually suited him. As he finished cleaning the table, an irritating voice spoke from behind him. Uchiha. Gritting his teeth, Sasuke straightened and turned. Hyuga. Neji, who should have looked out of place with his white polo shirt and slacks, actually seemed to fit into the atmosphere of the cafe. His cold, impassive eyes latched onto Sasuke as Neji calmly slid his hands into his pockets. Sasuke had to curb an instant belligerent reaction to the other boy as they faced each other. For some reason, the calm Hyuga had always rubbed him the wrong way, and the feeling was apparently mutual. Sasuke couldn't be sure of the real reason behind their actions, but animosity was animosity. Live with it. After a long, tense silence, Sasuke finally asked, "What do you want, Hyuga?" Neji considered Sasuke for a moment. "I hear there was a disturbance between you and Naruto today." Sasuke scowled. "That's none of your business. What was the situation, Uchiha?" he demanded softly, his voice cold. Sasuke unconsciously shifted into a fighting stance, his eyes narrowed. "I said it's none of your business, Hyuga." Shoulders tense, Sasuke clenched his fists. "Now get out." Neji didn't even blink. "I consider Naruto's business my business." He paused. "Were you fighting with him? What are you, his keeper?" Sasuke bit out. "Why are you always so concerned about him?" Hyuga didn't reply, but Sasuke could almost swear that a hint of red fleetingly touched the boy's cheeks. Neji smirked in response. "That's none of your business." Sasuke bristled at that. Before he could open his mouth to bite out a scathing reply, however, Neji turned. "Be glad that he seems fond of you, Uchiha," the boy calmly tossed over his shoulder, "because the moment he isn't, you'll have much worse than a black eye to worry about." Scowling, Sasuke clenched his fists tightly at his side and watched Neji walk off. "Damn him, what right does he have to threaten me like that? Bastard." Snatching up his washcloth, Sasuke stomped over to the next vacated table and began furiously swiping bits of food and ash from the smooth surface. As always, Neji's unconditional support of Naruto, especially when this support involved a fight with Sasuke, pissed the Uchiha off on a level he didn't care to delve into. How those two even became friends was a mystery. Naruto kicks Neji's ass once, and suddenly the pale Hyuga is his champion for life? What the hell? It wasn't as though Sasuke was afraid of Neji. He could easily hold his own in a fight, and he could rest secure in the knowledge that even if he lost, the Hyuga wouldn't be in good shape either. It was just that their rivalry, which had existed since the two had first set eyes on each other, seemed to have stepped up a notch when Sasuke and Naruto had become close, whether the two had been enemies or friends at the time. Why did he and Neji despise each other so much? Lost in his musings, Sasuke frowned and continued to work. Hey there, hot stuff. Mind getting me a drink? Glancing up, Sasuke saw a wiry guy with about 40 piercings wink saucily at him and lick his lips. Sasuke stifled a groan, and a gag, and dredged up a small, painful smile in return. Right away. I hate my life. Tired, weary, and irritated, Sasuke made his way down the hall in his dorm, ignoring cheerful voices as they streamed out of open doors. A quick glance at his watch told him that it was 7 o'clock, his day was finally over. With a soft sigh of relief, Sasuke pulled out his key and unlocked the door to his room. Thank God for single rooms. If I had to deal with a roommate right now, I'd probably kill him. Stepping in, Sasuke slammed his door shut, threw the lock, and flopped gracelessly onto his couch, an arm covering his eyes. God, I'm tired. I could have kissed you. Sasuke's arm tightened over his face. Naruto's comments from earlier in the day had plagued him, and Sasuke had found himself analyzing the boy's words. No matter how he looked at it, it felt like Naruto had been flirting with him. Was that even possible? And did Sasuke even want that? Sighing, Sasuke lowered his arm and stared at the ceiling. With Naruto, it's too hard to tell. He makes comments like that, but the way he treats them as jokes. I can't tell if he's honestly joking or just trying to cover it up. Sasuke frowned. Which do I want it to be? Unable to find an answer to that question, Sasuke glanced over at a picture on his desk. It was a picture of Naruto in full basketball regalia, a basketball tucked under one arm as he grinned and gave the victory sign to the camera. Sasuke remembered when he took that shot. Flashback. Damn it, he won again. Grudgingly focusing his camera, Sasuke snapped pictures of the team as the players congratulated each other, certain that the principal would have his head if these pictures didn't make it into the school newspaper. Sasuke hated school sports and would rather saw his leg off than participate in the mindless cheering that always accompanied them, but the job looked good on a resume, and if he took enough good shots, he could make a portfolio. Unfortunately, his job currently included taking special pictures of the MVP. Schooling his face into a cold glare, he rose from his seat on the bleachers and made his way down to the court. The blonde he was unwillingly seeking was surrounded by fans, cheerfully soaking up the praise and shoulder slaps. As Naruto turned and spotted the photographer, the temperature of Sasuke's gaze dropped several degrees. A smirk on his face, Naruto made his way over to his rival and stopped in front of him. I'll bet you just hate it that I made the most shots today, don't you, Uchiha? His smirk twisted. You have to ruin a perfectly good roll of film with shots of me. Deigning not to answer him, Sasuke simply lifted his camera. Naruto's face immediately shifted into a smile as Sasuke's flash went off. Sasuke quelled a brief spurt of disappointment. I was hoping to get a shot of him with that glower on his face. Now that would be a perfect addition to the school paper. Lowering his camera, Sasuke sent Naruto a brief nod before turning away. Oi, Uchiha. Naruto waited as Sasuke glanced back at him. Take one more picture. Sasuke lifted a brow, a cold smirk crossing his face. That's a little conceited of you, don't you think? Naruto snorted. I'm not talking about the newspaper, dumbass. He ignored the way Sasuke tensed at the insult. I want you to take a shot for yourself. Sasuke narrowed his eyes. What on earth makes you think I want one? Just do it. Naruto waited as Sasuke scowled and reluctantly lifted his camera. You ready? Of course, Usura Tonkachi. Naruto briefly stuck his tongue out at the insult, but before Sasuke could snap the picture, his face melted into a triumphant grin. Sasuke's breath caught in his throat at the sudden wave of humor and camaraderie that poured from the blonde. Swallowing hard, Sasuke snapped the picture and lowered his camera. I've never seen him smile at me like that before. Chuckling, Naruto dropped the pose and slapped the stunned boy on the back. See, Uchiha? Even you can't ruin my mood after a win. Giving Sasuke a two-fingered salute and a wink, Naruto turned and wandered off into the crowd of milling people. A second later, Sasuke recovered enough to scowl furiously. He thinks that he can just make a fool out of me like that? Turning on his heel, Sasuke made his way out of the gymnasium. As soon as I develop these, I'm tossing that damn picture and its negative into the garbage. Yet somehow, the picture had made it into a frame, standing proudly beside his bed. End flashback. Sitting up, Sasuke wandered over to his desk and leaned on it, gazing at the picture. That was the day our relationship started changing. He threw me off kilter with that damn smile, and I haven't been able to get him out of my mind since. He picked it up, running his thumb over the frame. After that, even though I wouldn't admit it, I wanted him to smile at me that way again. Sasuke resisted the impulse to run his fingers over the image of Naruto, determinedly setting the picture back on his desk. I should have thrown this out years ago. In fact, I should do it now. He didn't move. After a moment of struggling with himself, Sasuke gave up and shook his head. I still can't fight it. No matter how much denial I go through, I still want to be closer to him. I wonder if he wants to get closer to me, too. Uchiha Sasuke doesn't get flustered. He doesn't fume, fuss, or get anxious, but he can, and will, grow annoyed when someone is late for an appointment and silently acknowledge this to himself. So if it looked like he was currently pacing back and forth, glancing at his watch and muttering under his breath, "You must be losing your marbles. It's almost 2 already, damn him," he mumbled while enjoying a quick, pointless walk to the end of the aisle of books before suddenly deciding to go back. Where the hell is he? The sound of the library door made him pause and glance in its direction. Spotting a shock of blonde hair, Sasuke swiftly strode forward, sat at the table in front of him and buried his nose in the book waiting for him. He ignored the sound of footsteps as they approached him. "Sasuke, there you are." Smiling sheepishly, Naruto set his bag in the chair next to Sasuke and leaned against the table. "Sorry I'm so late. You wouldn't believe what happened." "Then spare me." Sasuke didn't even glance up from his book, and from his tone, Naruto might as well have been a piece of gum on his shoe. "Make yourself useful and get a book." Yeah, Naruto replied, moving to browse the books available to him. "I don't know why I bother apologizing to you. I'd stand better chances convincing the Grim Reaper that he's a ballerina than breaking through the brick wall that is Sasuke the Pissy." Sasuke looked up at that, his eyes cold enough to give Satan a chill. "You're 2 hours late, Uzumaki. I know it, and I'm sorry." Snagging a book, Naruto settled down next to Sasuke. "I honestly lost track of time." Satan would have started sneezing. "How do you lose track of 2 hours?" Naruto glanced at him, apparently torn between telling Sasuke and keeping quiet. After a long moment, the blonde simply smiled charmingly. "I dunno. They have a tendency to slip through your fingers." He held up his hands and wiggled his fingers to demonstrate. "Seriously, I think I'll need a net or something to hang on to those tricky hours." Sasuke gave him a flat glare, but a part of him was intrigued. What isn't he telling me? Reluctantly, he decided not to ask. "Maybe I'll just solder a watch to your arm instead," he stated, privately enjoying the wince that accompanied his statement as he stood and moved to the book rack. "I think we should do a report on Christopher Columbus," Sasuke added absent-mindedly, running a finger over the bindings of several books. When Naruto snorted, the pale boy glanced back at him. "Columbus was an ass. If we're going to do an explorer, at least do Marco Polo or something. If nothing else, he's got a game named after him." Naruto started rifling through the pages of the book he'd found. Lifting an eyebrow, Sasuke turned around and leaned back against the books. "You know about Columbus?" "Yeah," Naruto replied softly, his attention on whatever he was reading. "He comes over here, not in 3 small ships, but with the full support of Spain, starts mucking around, and even starts the slave trade in the Americas." Shaking his head, he turned the page. "I'm not going to write a glowing report on how fantastic he was." Sasuke blinked in surprise. "Huh." Naruto glanced up. Huh, what? I never pegged you for someone who'd know something like that. Eyebrows furrowing, Naruto stood. I'm not as oblivious as people think I am, Sasuke. I know how to pay attention. Clearly irritated with the mild surprise on Sasuke's face, he turned and glanced back at the book he was reading. I don't think this has anything useful in it, he mumbled under his breath. Eyes scanning the history books behind Sasuke, Naruto grunted. That one should have something on Marco Polo. Stepping up, he glared at Sasuke. Are you going to move or not? Sasuke blinked at him. Huh, it's been a while since he was actually mad at me. For some odd reason, that amused him. Folding his arms, he smirked at Naruto. I'm sure you don't need it. Can't you just write a report on him from memory? Naruto scowled. No, I can't. Now will you move already? And here I thought you were an obliviousness-free zone. Move it, Uchiha. Naruto's scowl grew when Sasuke simply stretched his arms out and settled more comfortably against the bookshelf. Honestly, of all the times to grow a sense of humor, he muttered. Sasuke stifled a small laugh at the grumpy look on Naruto's face. Is this how he feels when he teases me? No wonder he does it so often. Allowing a smug smile to cross his face, Sasuke gave Naruto a challenging look. Well, you pride yourself on being taller than me. I'm sure you can reach the book with me standing here. Muttering under his breath, Naruto stepped forward. Fine, damn it. He reached up to grab the book on the top shelf, but his hand was shy of reaching it. Swearing under his breath, Naruto stepped closer. And closer. The smirk fell off Sasuke's face as he was suddenly presented with a very close-up view of Naruto's chest. The blonde's muscles rippled under his dark blue shirt as he strained upwards, and Sasuke's mouth went dry as Naruto unconsciously tiptoed a bit closer. Swallowing hard, Sasuke fought the urge to squirm. Damn, he smells good. A scent vaguely like honey and cinnamon wafted into Sasuke's nose as the boy pressed himself back into the books. Naruto was nearly sandwiching him against the wall, precious few centimeters separating them. Turning his face away, Sasuke had to fight the insane urge to grab fistfuls of Naruto's shirt, bury his face in the taller boy's chest, and inhale deeply. Damn it, what's wrong with me? He's just a guy. Sasuke swallowed hard again and closed his eyes as Naruto slid a leg between Sasuke's for leverage. Jesus. Trying to control his breathing, Sasuke glanced up at Naruto. The blonde's face was skewed, tongue peeking out from behind his lips and tilting upward as Naruto focused on reaching his prize. Sasuke's heart started pounding as he placed his suddenly sweaty palms flat against the books. Every bone in his body was screaming for him to pull Naruto closer, to run his hand down the other boy's chest, grab his head and pull him down for a furious kiss, anything. Good lord, I'm attracted to him. I'm actually attracted to Uzumaki Naruto. Struggling with this revelation, Sasuke barely heard Naruto mutter, "Oh, to hell with it." He started to glance up at him when Sasuke abruptly found himself flattened against the wall, Naruto's entire length pressing against him. Embarrassingly enough, a small squeak slipped free of Sasuke's lips as his rapidly frying brain registered the feel of Naruto's hard, toned body pressing against his. Sasuke swallowed hard, his face pressed against Naruto's ear and jaw. Just think good thoughts. Think pure thoughts. Find a zen moment. As Naruto shifted against him, Sasuke squeezed his eyes shut and thought desperately, what's the sound of one hand clapping? If a tree falls in the woods and no one is around, does it make a sound? Is he going to get off me before I embarrass myself? Before Sasuke's panic could break the surface, Naruto uttered a triumphant sound and pulled the book free, stepping back. He waved the book mockingly in front of Sasuke. Huh, what do you think of that, Uchiha? Sasuke opened his mouth to reply, but he only managed a soft, strangled sound before shoving Naruto out of his way and moving to the table. He immediately started gathering his things, throwing his notes haphazardly into his book bag and tucking the various history books he'd collected under his arm. Naruto blinked at the sudden, frenzied motions. Where are you going? I do have other engagements, Naruto, Sasuke bit out coldly. Straightening, he stormed towards the front desk. Next time, I suggest you arrive on time. He left, ignoring the bewildered look on Naruto's face. There's no way I can sit next to him now that I know I want him. A flush appearing on his cheeks, he bowed his head as he checked out his books and let his bangs shield him from view. God, how am I going to face him again? Accepting the books, Sasuke strode for the exit. Sasuke Teme. Wait just a damn minute. No, 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 not dealing with you now. No, no, no. Sasuke had just managed to place a hand on the door when Naruto's large hand wrapped firmly about his upper arm. Damn it, where the hell are you running off to? I know I was late, but we still have work to do. I'll start researching online tonight and dig up some sources, Sasuke cut in. Unlike you, I've been here for quite some time already, and I'm going home. Let go of me, just let go. Naruto hesitated, but he finally released Sasuke's arm. Fine, I'll see you tomorrow, Sasuke. The slimmer boy simply grunted in reply, throwing open the door and stalking away from him. I really need to stay away from him until I figure this out. It wasn't until Sasuke was halfway home that he realized that he'd forgotten his wallet at the library. Damn it, the gods were smiling on Neji today. The pale boy had decided to visit the library on a whim, not really planning to do any research, when he'd come across none other than Uzumaki Naruto. The blonde was sitting by himself, alternately chewing on his lip or his pencil as he scribbled notes from a book. And Uchiha was nowhere in sight. Allowing himself a small smile, Neji made his way over to Naruto's side and glanced down at the book he was reading. Naruto didn't even seem to notice his presence, focused as he was on his work. After indulging himself by drinking in the boy's sight for a few moments, Neji chose to announce his presence. I've never seen you so studious before. Yeah, that seems to be the general consensus, Naruto replied easily. Neji lifted a brow. He knew I was here? Are you making any progress? Naruto paused for a moment, then placed his pencil down and leaned back in his chair. Yeah, I've been getting some good information down. Stretching his arms over his head, Naruto tipped his head back and smiled at an upside-down Neji. So, what brings you round these parts? Neji's small smile grew. Just wandering about. When Naruto nodded and sat up, Neji hesitated. Should I ask him now? The proud boy slipped his hands into his pockets. I guess this is as good a time as any. The Uchiha is absent for once. Clearing his throat softly, Neji ventured a few words. Are you busy this weekend, Naruto? Interested, Naruto turned to face him, resting an arm on the back of the chair. Not particularly, no. Why? I have an extra ticket for a Yellow Card concert, and I thought that you might. Yellow Card? Are you serious? Leaping to his feet, Naruto grabbed both of the surprised Hyuga's shoulders. You have tickets to Yellow Card? Yes, Neji replied slowly, watching as Naruto's eyes brightened with joy. I take it you want to go? Hell yes. Grinning like a maniac, Naruto tightened his grip on Neji's shoulders. I tried for weeks to get tickets to that concert. You're officially the coolest guy ever. Attempting to suppress a smile and failing somewhat, Neji chuckled lightly. I'll drop by and pick you up on Saturday at 6, alright? Naruto's grin threatened to crack his head in half. Neji, I just realized something. I love you with all my heart and soul. With that, he threw his arms about the pale Hyuga and squeezed with all of his might. Blushing lightly, Neji allowed Naruto to hug him. If I'd known it was this easy to gain his affection, I'd have done this months ago. His gaze flickered to the left as a movement caught his eye. Uchiha Sasuke stood about 5 feet away, his features frozen. Neji blinked at him, then allowed a self-satisfied smile to cross his face. The smile remained as Naruto finally released him and stepped back, cheering happily. I'll see you on Saturday, then. Casting a sly look at Sasuke, Neji added, we could go out to dinner beforehand. Might treat. Seriously? I get Yellow Card and free food? Naruto laughed, whacking Neji on the shoulder. Where have you been all my life? Behind his back, Sasuke was loudly grinding his teeth and clenching his fists. Smiling, Neji began to walk away. It's a date, then. He took personal enjoyment from the look of barely suppressed fury that crossed Sasuke's face. Humming lightly to himself, Neji let himself out of the library. Yes, the gods were definitely smiling on him today. He managed to easily get dinner and a concert with Naruto while thoroughly pissing off the Uchiha. No wonder his horoscope had 5 stars today. Catch y'all later, Neji. Turning, Naruto waved cheerfully at the departing Hyuga, then paused as he spotted a quietly furious Sasuke. Hey, when'd you get back? Sometime around your declaration of undying love, Sasuke spat out. One part of him was accusing him of giving away too much about his emotions, but the rest of him didn't care. Stalking forward, Sasuke swiped his AWOL wallet off a chair, turned, and stormed away again. "Have fun on Saturday," he called out sarcastically. Damn him, and damn Neji to hell." On the heels of his anger, Sasuke heard Naruto mumble, "What the hell's gotten into him today?" Sasuke allowed his hair to cast shadows over his face. "Just, damn you, Naruto. Damn you for making me feel this way." About 3 hours later, Naruto lay sprawled on his bed, gazing at the ceiling. "I wonder what got into him today. What did I do that pissed him off so much?" Frowning, the blonde recounted the day's events. He wasn't sure why Sasuke had stormed off the first time, though he supposed that could be attributed to his being late. Sasuke could be surprisingly anal about stuff like that. But that didn't excuse his being pissed off the second time around. Honestly, Naruto couldn't fathom what the problem was. All Sasuke'd walked in on was Naruto making plans with. "Oh, for God's sake. Neji." Naruto slapped himself on the forehead, earning himself an odd look from Kiba, who was lounging on his own bed with a book on dogs in his hands. "Neji, what?" Naruto shook his head. "I just figured out why Sasuke's pissed at me. Those two hate each other's guts. No wonder Sasuke had a cow." Kiba snorted, returning his attention to his book. "Since when does Sasuke need an excuse to be mad at you? It's his life." "True." Naruto chuckled lightly. "Not that I don't encourage it every step of the way. Why do you provoke him, anyway? You'll end up with his fist down your throat at some point if you keep it up." "Been there, done that," Naruto replied. Making a decision, he stood up and grinned. "Besides, it's so much fun to ruffle his feathers." Kiba made a small noise of acknowledgement in his throat as he watched Naruto pull out some clothes and toss on a jacket. "Where are you off to?" "I'm gonna go work out." "Again?" Kiba frowned. "You're already huge. Why the hell would you need to work out?" Grinning, Naruto turned, lifted an arm and made a muscle. "Hey, keeping this beautiful, gorgeous body," he paused to plant a smacking kiss on his bicep, "takes a lot of hard, loving care." Snorting, Kiba rolled his eyes. "Just go, Narcissus. Hey, I love myself. I'm just not in love with myself." Naruto laughed and leapt out the door just as a pillow flew after him. Tossing it back, he slung his workout clothes over his shoulder and headed off to the gym. Maybe there I'll figure out what to do about Prince Uchiha. If you're why and you know it, clap your hands. Naruto sang from his position on the floor, lifting his legs and lower body slowly into the air before relaxing. If you're why and you know it, clap your hands. If you're why and you know it, and you really want to show it, if you're why and you know it. Alright, Uzumaki, that's enough. Hey, don't hate me cause I'm beautiful. Naruto called back, enjoying the round of laughter and groans that accompanied his remark. A grin on his face, he did another 10 repetitions before lowering his legs and rocking up onto his feet. Nothing pleased Naruto more than working out. Well, aside from ramen. The sensation of pushing his body to the limit, working up a good sweat, and hurting the next day in places he didn't know he had thrilled him. And hell, it was a great way to burn off UAL frustration. Even as gorgeous as he was, Naruto still didn't, and to be honest, didn't want to, score very often. What better way to blow off some steam than knocking the stuffing out of a punching bag? Of course, now that he didn't use Sasuke as said punching bag, Naruto had to settle for using the gyms. As he picked up a dumbbell and started work on his triceps, Naruto puzzled yet again on why he'd stopped fighting with Sasuke. He wasn't really sure, but it had suddenly seemed wrong. He was tired of picking fights with someone he was only pretending to hate, and he was sick of the "I hate you so I'll do everything I can to make you miserable" relationship they'd had. So, he'd changed it. Naruto had to admit, being friends with Sasuke instead of enemies made him a hell of a lot happier than he'd be any other way. Hanging out with the prick, and flirting with him, he'd admit it. Sasuke's face was always so priceless, was the highlight of his day. And the fact that Sasuke was gorgeous helped that along. Personally, Naruto preferred girls, but hey, a babe is a babe, right? Snorting, Naruto switched arms and wondered what Sasuke would say if Naruto ever told him that. A soft rustle beside him made Naruto glance up. Gaara stared impassively down at him, dressed in a red shirt and black shorts. Naruto grinned at him. "Yo, Gaara. Still a Slim Jim, I see." Gaara's eyes narrowed slightly. "Naruto. Still an atrocious sense of style, I see." Naruto's grin widened. Hey, I don't care what you say. I look good in orange. Before turning away, Gaara ran his eyes quickly down Naruto's body. Clad in an orange muscle shirt and blue gym shorts, Naruto should have looked awful by all rights, but he somehow managed to pull the look off. Gaara shook his head softly, moving to sit on a bench across from the blonde and picking up a dumbbell himself. One of the ways of Uzumaki Naruto, I suppose. After a few minutes of companionable silence, Naruto spoke up. So, what's new? You haven't been coming by the gym very often lately. Gaara made a soft noise in his throat as a response, but when Naruto frowned at him and started tapping his foot, Gaara rolled his eyes. I had a lot of tests and projects over the last 2 weeks, he finally replied. Naruto brightened instantly. See? It's not so hard to give people a direct answer. Naruto grinned as Gaara simply gave him a flat look. You don't have to become a motormouth like me to carry on a decent conversation. Gaara stared at him. You seem to be in a good mood today, he commented at length. Of course I'm in a good mood. I'm going to a Yellowcard concert with Neji on Saturday. Gaara froze, his dumbbell halfway up. With Neji? Yup. Bet you didn't know the guy wasn't a complete stiff, did ya? Naruto smirked, shifting his grip on the dumbbell to work his biceps. Gaara hesitated. You're going to a concert, that's it? Well, dinner beforehand. Naruto took in the frown that appeared on Gaara's face. Why? What's wrong with that? Are you sure this is a casual meeting? Naruto snorted. Of course it is. What else would it be? Gaara gazed at him for a long moment. It could be a date. Complete silence filled the air between them before Naruto burst out in laughter. Slapping his leg, Naruto tipped his head back as he cracked up. Neji? Asking me on a date? You've gotta be kidding me. Gaara's frown grew at Naruto's reaction. Why wouldn't he? Slowly regaining control of himself, Naruto swiped at his eyes. Because Neji's a bud of mine, nothing like that. Besides, if any of the girls he's ever gone out with heard you say that. He continued to chuckle. Gaara looked away. Neji's relationships with girls were never serious. They always broke up with him because they never did anything together. I don't think that's strong evidence in Neji's favor. His frown grew. He made a move on Naruto. This soon? Naruto took in the look on Gaara's face, his smile slowly dissipating. Gaara? What's the matter? After a moment, the other boy shook his head, set the dumbbell on the ground, and stood. I have to leave, he stated simply. His pale blue eyes stared solemnly at Naruto for a long moment. Naruto lifted an eyebrow. What? Since I have been unable to come in recently. Gaara frowned slightly before smoothing his features. Will you train with me? A barbell buddy? Naruto grinned. Sure thing. I'll make sure to drag your sorry ass in here and abuse you. Gaara blinked at that but said nothing, turning with a curt nod and walking out of the gym. Pausing in the hallway, he touched his nose gently and glanced at his fingers. Yup, nosebleed. The hum of several washing machines chugging away reverberated in the small laundry room. Hands folded before him, Sasuke frowned gently at the machines as he waited for his load of whites to finish, his colors already spinning away in a dryer. Today's Saturday, he mused, his frown deepening. Naruto had been on cloud 9 for most of the morning, trotting up and down the hall and shouting into random rooms that he was going to that damn concert. The last 2 days had been bad enough, knowing how he felt about the blonde and living only a few doors down from him, but today, having Naruto declare just how much fun he was going to have with Neji tonight. Sasuke had cheerfully gathered up his laundry and practically sprinted for the laundry room before he pulled out an Uzi and let it rip. Sasuke's frown turned into a scowl as he imagined the two of them on their date. Naruto appeared oblivious to the implications of his little rendezvous with Hyuga, but there was no doubt in Sasuke's mind that Neji would take advantage of the situation. It figures that as soon as I figure out how I feel about the idiot, Neji decides to come out of the fucking closet. That smirk when Neji had left yesterday. Sasuke had wanted to rush over and rip the other boy's teeth out. I've never been so mad in my life. Sighing lightly, he straightened and ran a hand through his hair. Hell, I've never even been jealous before. How long have these feelings been there? Lips tightening with determination, Sasuke stood and walked over to his washer, waiting as the last few minutes ticked off on the timer. If Hyuga thinks I'll just sit back and take this, he's got another thing coming. I'll be damned if I let Naruto end up with that prick. Lifting a hand, Sasuke rested it on the cold metal and splayed his fingers. I still have more leverage than Neji, since Naruto and I are already close. Not to mention that little report we're doing together. A small smile crossed Sasuke's face. After all, we may need to spend a lot of time together to make sure we get a good grade on the project, and of course we could spend a lot of that time in each other's rooms. Chuckling lightly, Sasuke ran his fingers over the lid of the washing machine. Just you wait, Naruto. I'll get you yet. Okay, that's just creepy. Jumping, Sasuke spun about to see Naruto staring at him with a quirked eyebrow, his laundry bag slung over his shoulder. It's not every day you see someone caress a washing machine and chuckle evilly. He set his bag down, still watching Sasuke warily. Quite frankly, I think I'm scared. Fighting the small blush that was trying to claw its way onto his face, Sasuke turned back to the machine. Luckily, the timer had just hit 0, so Sasuke was able to avoid answering by throwing open the lid. He ignored Naruto as he began to pull his whites out of the bin. Still giving me the cold shoulder, eh? Rolling his eyes, Naruto picked up his bag, moved over to an empty washer, and started haphazardly throwing in his clothes. Sasuke glanced over at him. You're doing your laundry? Shouldn't you be preparing for your concert? He questioned coldly. Naruto didn't look up, rummaging around in his laundry bag for more colored clothes. Well, he eventually replied, it's been piling up for a while, and besides. He straightened, turning to look solemnly at Sasuke. Someone told me you'd be down here. Sasuke blinked at him, wet clothes forgotten in his hand. You came looking for me? Yeah, I guess I did. Naruto stretched his arms backwards, trying to crack his back. You haven't said a word to me since you flew off the handle on Thursday in the library. It bugged me. Sasuke's heart jumped in his chest. I see. Looking away, he bent to place a pile of wet clothes into a laundry bin so he could regain control of his face. It wouldn't do for Naruto to see him grin like an idiot. He'd probably think that Sasuke had lost his mind. Straightening, Sasuke schooled his face into an impassive mask and looked over at him, his hand reaching into the washer. Did it occur to you that maybe I had nothing to say to you? That's good, keep it slow. He clasped a piece of clothing and pulled it out of the washer, watching Naruto's face. Sasuke, I know you. There's a difference between you having nothing to say, and. Naruto trailed off, his face contorting. Confused, Sasuke frowned. What? Naruto lifted a hand to cover his mouth, his eyes dancing with mirth. Think you have a slight problem, Sasuke. Eyebrows furrowing at the snickers that were escaping from Naruto's mouth, Sasuke glanced down at his hand. Then he stared, and kept staring. A pair of his briefs sat in his palm. And they were stained bright green. Was it too much to ask to be smote by God right here? Right now? Just one little lightning bolt? A dark blush covering his entire face, Sasuke unwrapped the green sock, not his. If he could get his hands on the guy who left it in the washer, that had buried itself in his underwear. Beside him, Naruto had collapsed onto the ground in convulsing fits of laughter. You know, he gasped, it figures that you're a tighty-whitey sort of guy, but that? Unable to control himself any longer, Naruto clasped his stomach in both hands and rolled on the floor. Sasuke's face turned purple. Utterly humiliated, the Uchiha gathered the rest of his whites, which had thankfully escaped without incident, and threw them into his laundry bin, storming over to the dryers, once he'd stepped over the laughing Naruto, and throwing them in. He punched in the time and started to leave the room. I'm never going to live this down. Sasuke. Wait. Swiping at his eyes, Naruto sat up. I am sorry I laughed at you, really. Come back. Sasuke didn't turn, his fists clenched at his sides. What do you want? He ground out. Taking several calming breaths, Naruto climbed to his feet. I just wanted to ask if you wanted to hang out tomorrow. As a peace offering? He smirked when Sasuke finally turned to look at him, a surprised expression on his face. I'm not sure why you were mad at me in the first place, but you're easier to deal with when you're only pissy towards everyone else. Sasuke stared at him for a good 10 seconds before allowing a small smile to settle on his face. Alright, what time tomorrow? Sometime after 1 o'clock. No way in hell am I getting up any earlier than that on a Sunday. He grinned. I'll come pounding on your door. Sasuke's smile turned into a dry smirk. Just make sure you don't show up at 5, Dobi. Naruto winced. Did you have to bring that up? I'll be on time, I promise. You'd better. With that, Sasuke walked out of the laundry room, hands shoved into his pockets. Warmth was spreading from his heart. So Naruto doesn't like it when I'm mad at him, and he wants to spend time with me. Seems like a good sign. After checking that no one was around, Sasuke let himself grin for the first time in years. He didn't stop until he got to his room. Neji had never been so nervous in his life. Which really wasn't saying much, since as a rule, he didn't get nervous, but it still made the situation that much more poignant. He'd prepared for about 30 minutes before finally leaving to pick Naruto up, rummaging around in his closet. What was he supposed to wear? It was a rock concert, so his normal clothes wouldn't do. Jeans, and once they'd left, he'd been a constant bundle of nervous energy, well, for him. What should he say? Was he making a good impression? How far should he push tonight? Across from him and completely unaware of his companion's turbulent thoughts, Uzumaki Naruto was talking animatedly about some old childhood crush while attacking the hamburger in front of him. The fact that Neji had chosen a fairly nice restaurant didn't seem to faze the blonde at all. He demanded a hamburger after looking at the menu for about 30 seconds, claiming that he was in the mood for meat and he wanted it now. Neji had nearly choked on his glass of water when he'd heard that. Working on his plate of pasta, Neji watched bemusedly as Naruto talked around his food. The boy was hovering on the edge of disgusting, but he seemed to have it down to an art. Swallow just enough before speaking so that your companion doesn't see everything in your mouth. Then eat more. So anyway, the guy bets me that. Pause, quick gulp of orange soda. I can't make a basket from the other end of the court. If I lost, I had to do his homework for a month. Which I'm not sure would have been a good idea, since I was flunking most of the classes he would have made me do. And if I won, he had to give me his girlfriend. Naruto grinned. Needless to say, when I made the shot, he was in big trouble. Neji allowed himself a small smile. You took his girlfriend? Hell no. Girls aren't prizes. He leaned forward conspiratorially. But the fact that he gambled her and lost was enough for her to give him the can. Which is what you wanted in the first place, Neji mused. Did she end up with you in the end? With a face like this? You bet she did. Naruto laughed, taking another bite of his burger. Didn't last long, though. She became a Sasuke groupie. At the mention of the other boy's name, the small smile dropped right off Neji's face. He'd hoped the other boy wouldn't come up, though it figured that his annoying presence would continue to follow the blonde. Before he could think of something to change the subject, he wasn't much of a conversationalist. After all, Naruto pinned him with his gaze and swallowed the rest of his mouthful. Speaking of Sasuke, Neji stifled a groan. Why do you two hate each other so much? Neji didn't reply, turning his attention back to his food. Naruto frowned. Seriously, what's the deal? You two have been at each other's throats for as long as I can remember. The blonde leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. I wouldn't care so much, but I thought Sasuke was going to take my head off when he found out we're hanging out tonight. Am I going to get caught in the middle of something? You are the middle of something. I'm not sure why we fight. Exactly, Neji slowly replied, but I'd rather not talk about him tonight. Naruto sighed. Okay. After a moment's silence, Naruto reached out and snagged Neji's hand. Startled, Neji watched as Naruto began to examine his palm, spreading the other boy's fingers and running his own over the lines crisscrossing his skin. A shiver ran down Neji's spine. Naruto, what are you doing? You wanted a change of subject, right? He continued running his fingers over Neji's palm. Well, I read a book on palm reading, so I figured I'd test it. I see. Neji swallowed, allowing Naruto's warm fingers to fiddle with his hand. Against his will, his heart started pounding. His hands are larger than mine, and they're calloused. The feel of Naruto's rough hands on his skin was making his palm tingle. Huh, interesting, Naruto finally commented. Looking up, he ran his finger over a particular line. According to the book I read, you're an incredibly passionate person, but... He switched to another line. You're also really controlling. You probably wouldn't settle for any mediocre love interest, so when you finally fall, you're going to fall hard. Neji fought down a slow blush. And, what else do you see? He asked reluctantly, unwilling to let Naruto pull away. Naruto paused, then looked up at Neji with a solemn look on his face. You're going to get lucky tonight. What Neji blurted, his face starting to turn red. Naruto held the face for about 3 seconds, then burst out in laughter. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. He laughed loudly for a few minutes, heedless of the other people in the restaurant. You just looked so interested in what I was saying. I can't tell the future by looking at your palm. He grinned. The book didn't cover that. Neji throttled his blush and threw it in a closet, locking the door. Clearing his throat, he attempted to regain his dignity. That wasn't funny, Naruto. Oh, yes, it was. You're just being a sore sport. Sticking his tongue out at Neji, Naruto released the boy's hand and went back to his meal. How much time do we have before the concert? Glad for the excuse to look away, Neji glanced at his watch. We should go get in line in about half an hour. Looking up, he watched as a delighted grin made its way across Naruto's face. I still can't believe I'm going to this concert. Man, do I owe you one? Neji blinked. Owe me one? He's thinking of this as a favor? Frowning lightly, Neji mused over how he should react to this. On the one hand, if he's thinking this is just a favor, I certainly can't push things tonight. But on the other hand, he may feel obliged to ask me out later, or maybe I could request his favor in another form. Coming to a decision, Neji smiled. Yes you do. The amount of noise was deafening in the concert hall as hundreds of fans jumped up and down in a mosh pit before the stage. Neji kept his hands stuffed in his pockets as he watched Naruto bounce beside him. The blonde glanced over at him, a wide smile on his face. Come on, Neji, get into the spirit. I don't think so, he replied, amusement coloring his tone. Naruto groaned. Come on, you can't just stand there. Neji chuckled lightly. And what would you have me do? At least try this. Stepping forward, Naruto grabbed Neji's hand and raised it into the air, folding down his ring finger, middle finger and thumb. Now keep it that way. Amused, Neji looked up at his hand. You really expect me to? Oh, I'm not done with you yet. Keeping one hand on Neji's outstretched wrist, Naruto moved slightly behind Neji and slid a hand under his hair to gently cup the back of Neji's head. He mumbled. You're lucky. You have great hair for this. For what? Neji was thankful for the level of noise around him, since his voice had emerged surprisingly husky. What else? Gripping the back of Neji's head, Naruto pushed the other boy's head down, then yanked it back up. It was surprise alone that allowed Naruto to get in 2 more head bangs before Neji pulled away. I'm not. Neji paused, trying to regain control of his voice. I am not going to do that in public. But your hair's so great for it. Naruto whined. Mine just stays up in the air. I said no. Heaving a giant sigh, Naruto turned back to the stage. You know, I think you and Sasuke are more alike than you realize. Neji narrowed his eyes at that. A slight frown rested on Naruto's face, sending a little worm of unease into Neji's heart. Is he going to have a bad time because of me? Looking down at his hand, he sighed. If I do the hand thing, will that satisfy you? Naruto flashed him a grin. Yup. Shaking his head, Neji lifted his hand into the air. I can't believe I'm doing this. By the time 2 more hours of performance had passed, even Neji was bobbing his hand and singing along with the music. A thrill raced through him, born entirely of doing something completely stupid, and the grins he was receiving from Naruto made it worthwhile. I must look like an idiot, he thought vaguely, but then he glanced over at Naruto, who was currently trying to pick someone up for crowd surfing. Then again, I am with him. Chuckling, he shook his head again and started singing louder. The things I do for love. On the drive home, Naruto insisted on riding with the windows down while they blasted the CD he'd bought at the concert. Again, Neji decided to indulge the blonde, if only for the delighted grin Naruto would give him if he complied. Neji was beginning to think that he'd do almost anything just to receive that happy smile. A prospect that worried him a little. Neji certainly didn't like the idea of being wrapped about Naruto's little finger, but he supposed he could find consolation in the fact that Naruto didn't know just how much power he wielded over the proud Hyuga. Parking in front of Naruto's dorm, Neji leaned back in his seat and cast his pale eyes on Naruto. Neji, I seriously think you should elope with me. Right now. Leaning forward, the blonde ejected his CD from the car's sound system. I'll consider it, Neji calmly replied. Naruto flashed him another grin. I'll repay you for this, I swear. I don't really know what you like, but don't worry about it. Neji let his eyes roam discreetly over Naruto's body as the blonde gathered his things. He leaned slightly towards the boy, not really sure of what he was doing. I guess I'll catch you in class on Monday, right? Neji watched as Naruto's lips moved, drawn in by the stirrings of temptation. Iruka should be covering mutants in genetics. Neji's heart started pounding in his chest as he suddenly placed one hand on Naruto's headdress and leaned forward. At the last second, Naruto glanced away, and Neji's lips ended up brushing against his cheek. It was at that same moment that Neji's brain came back online. What the fuck am I doing? Before Naruto could even look over at him, Neji was already sitting straight, calmly gazing ahead. He kept his cool as Naruto blinked at him. Did you just? Neji turned his pale eyes on Naruto, his expression cool and collected. Did I what? Naruto blinked again. Nothing. After a moment, he opened the door and climbed out. Thanks again for this, Neji. The other boy nodded, watching Naruto carefully. After a moment's thought, Naruto closed the door and leaned against the open window frame, grinning at Neji. You know, you should wear street clothes more often. They look good on you. Chuckling at the slow, surprised blink that Neji gave him, Naruto slapped the top of the car. Be off with you. Turning his attention back to the road, Neji put the car in drive and pulled away. His eyes flickered up to his rear-view mirror, where he could see Naruto waving cheerily at him. I guess he didn't notice anything. Breathing a sigh of relief, Neji put on his blinker, pulled out into the main street, and headed for his own dorm. He didn't see Naruto lightly touch his cheek and frown as he turned to go inside. Kiba glanced up from his desk as he heard a key turn in the door's lock. Naruto walked in, apparently lost in thought. Hey man, how was the concert? Kiba smirked dryly. I still can't believe you scored a ticket. Where do you get all that luck? Huh? Naruto blinked at him, suddenly snapping himself out of it. What did you say? Kiba frowned. What's the matter with him? I said, how was the concert? Awesome. A huge grin split Naruto's face. They played a lot of my favorites, the lighting was awesome, and even Neji was. Kiba blinked when Naruto trailed off, his lips pursing lightly. Neji was what? He's not as uptight as I thought, Naruto finished absent-mindedly. Closing the door and throwing the lock, Naruto stripped down to his boxers and flopped into bed, face down. Kiba watched him curiously. Did something happen? Kiba asked cautiously. I haven't seen you this quiet since you realized that Queen was named for a reason. After a pause, Naruto glanced up. Neji kissed me on the cheek tonight, he stated bluntly. He what? Stunned, Kiba turned towards him. What did you do? Nothing. I cracked a joke, sent him off like nothing had happened. Naruto rolled over, staring up at the ceiling. I guess Gaara was right. Kiba hesitated. What are you going to do? He studied Naruto's face. You don't look too upset over it. A pause. That's because I'm not. Not really. He hesitated. I wonder what that means. I'm not sure I'm comfortable having this conversation. Are you attracted to him? Naruto made a soft noise of acknowledgement. I guess. I never thought about it before. He paused. He's not the one I want, though. Then who is? Naruto paused for a long moment. Dunno, he replied thoughtfully. Guess I'll find out soon enough. He rolled onto his side away from Kiba, ignoring the quirked eyebrow at his odd comment. Good night, dog boy. Night, Foxface. After watching his roommate for a long moment, Kiba turned back to the sheets spread out on his desk. I wonder what he's thinking of. Shaking his head, Kiba returned to work. Whatever it is, I pity the person he targets. Naruto's smarter than he seems to be. And he always gets what he wants. Sasuke sat at his desk, idly looking up sources on Marco Polo while tapping his fingers against the keyboard. His eyes continually flickered to the clock at the bottom of the screen. It's 1 o'clock. A dark frown settled on his face. Is he going to be late again? Maybe he tired himself out with Neji last night. Sasuke's frown turned into a scowl. I swear, if Hyuga tried anything, I'll tap, tap, tap. Glancing up, Sasuke turned in his chair. Doors open, he called out. With a click, the door swung open, and a yawning, ruffled-looking Naruto stepped into the room. See? Told you I'd be on time, he stated casually, regarding Sasuke with sleepy eyes. The Uchiha stared at him. Naruto had decided to arrive in dark blue pajamas, his hair mussed, which, surprisingly, you could tell, and his whole body giving off the air of, I just rolled out of bed. Aren't I adorable? Sasuke lifted an eyebrow. Did you just wake up? He asked incredulously. More or less. I told you, I sleep in Sundays. Stretching lightly, Naruto made his way over to the couch and flopped down on it. In my book, Sunday doesn't start until sometime around noon, and that's early morning. Sasuke snorted, rising to join Naruto on the couch. If it were up to you, I doubt any day would ever get started. Naruto grinned and lifted his arms, resting them along the back of the couch. Damn right. You know how many wars we'd avoid if everyone got 15 hours of sleep each night? Sasuke rolled his eyes. I'm sure. He watched appreciatively as Naruto ran a hand through his unruly hair. For some reason, seeing Naruto when the guy was only about 60 awake was incredibly tempting. It made Sasuke wonder what he could do to wake Naruto up. Hey, are you listening to me? Sasuke blinked. What? He was talking to me? Damn. Naruto rolled his eyes. I said, what do you want to do? Are we just going to sit around, or what? I hadn't thought about that. Frowning, Sasuke looked around. What on earth could we do in my room that would keep us entertained? Immediately, several possibilities rushed to mind that forced Sasuke to clear his throat and look away, a light blush coloring his cheeks. Down, boy. Cool it on the perverted thoughts while Naruto's here. You don't want to embarrass yourself. Standing, Naruto wandered over to Sasuke's movie collection, which the Uchiha hadn't touched in months. He laughed. You have Monty Python? Grinning, he looked over at Sasuke. I didn't think you'd be one for comedies. It's dry British humor and a classic. I made an exception, Sasuke stated succinctly. He watched as Naruto extracted the movie from his collection. We're going to watch it? Why not? Crouching, Naruto placed the movie into the DVD player. I'm in the mood for some dry British humor, as you put it. He glanced back over his shoulder. Any problems? No. Amused with the grin Naruto flashed him, Sasuke leaned back and settled himself against the couch. He could think of worse things than watching a movie with Naruto, especially when the boy was looking so teddy bear-like. Lips twitching, he looked away. If he knew that I just thought of him that way. Satisfied with the DVD player, Naruto rose and moved to the door, placing a hand on it. He glanced at Sasuke, lifting an eyebrow. Open or shut? Sasuke's eyes widened slightly. Shut. His heart started pounding as Naruto dutifully closed the door and returned to sit next to Sasuke. This shed an entirely new light on the situation. He now officially had Naruto all to himself, and since he didn't have a roommate, there was virtually no chance of someone interrupting them. Swallowing hard, he picked up the DVD remote and started the movie. I don't know if I should be terrified or ecstatic. A few minutes into the movie, Naruto shifted, tossing his arms back against the back of the couch. Sasuke's eyes flickered to his shoulder as he realized that Naruto had just, essentially, put his arm around the slimmer boy. His heart jumping in his chest, Sasuke looked over at him. A second later, Naruto glanced over at him and blinked. What? Without thinking, Sasuke let his eyes flicker back to the arm about his shoulders. Naruto stared at his appendage in confusion before laughing lightly and removing it. Sasuke cursed mentally. Sorry, did I invade your personal bubble, Sasuke? He slid down in his seat, attempting to get comfortable. Yawning, he folded his hands behind his head. Didn't mean to. When Sasuke finished mentally kicking his own ass, he looked away and mumbled, I didn't mind. Tipping his head, Naruto glanced over at him. What did you say? Sasuke shook his head. Nothing. After a few more minutes of watching the movie, he looked over at Naruto, whose eyes were half-lidded as he gazed at the TV. Sasuke frowned. Why are you so tired today, anyway? He asked warily. Naruto didn't move. Neji and I screwed like rabbits all night. Doesn't let a man get much sleep. To emphasize his point, Naruto heaved a tremendous yawn. What did you say? Sasuke asked in an icily controlled voice. White-hot jealousy ran through him. I'll kill Neji. I'll hunt him down, right now, and kill him. Chuckling, Naruto gave him a lazy look. You're incredibly gullible, Uchiha. Why the hell would we do something like that? Sasuke turned away, trying to unclench at least some of the muscles in his face. Why would you joke about something like that? He ground out. Naruto watched him curiously. I joke about everything. What makes this any different? He tilted his head to the side as Sasuke struggled to rein in his anger. You know, if I didn't know any better, he started thoughtfully, I'd say you were jealous. Sasuke swung around, his eyes flashing. Jealous? Why the hell would I be jealous over? His words caught in his throat as Naruto suddenly grabbed his chin and moved closer, his eyes intense. Over why you? Naruto gazed deep into Sasuke's eyes. Oh, I don't know, he replied casually. Why don't you tell me? Sasuke's breath hitched as Naruto's eyes dropped to his mouth. His heart was hammering in his chest. I have nothing to tell you, Uzumaki. At the sound of his surname, Naruto's eyes snapped back up to Sasuke's, leaving the pale boy momentarily breathless. You sure? He asked, his voice surprisingly light. Sasuke blinked. Yes, my mistake, then. Smirking, Naruto released the boy's chin and sat back in his seat. He returned his gaze to the movie, then laughed. All right, they're at the French castle. I love this part. Utterly lost, Sasuke stared at Naruto as the boy made faces and mimicked the French guard. Off fart in your general direction. Naruto tipped his chin in the air. Spoiled English, K niggas. Does he have any idea of what he was just doing to me? Eyebrows furrowing, Sasuke continued to stare at the blonde. I thought for sure that he was going to kiss me. Is he really that oblivious? Before he could decide whether or not that level of stupidity was actually possible, Naruto glanced over at him. Don't look at me, moron, look at the TV. Flinching, Sasuke returned his attention to the movie. Damn it, man, stop being so fucking obvious. A dark frown on his face, he folded his arms and glared at the movie. If he was testing you just now, you'd... Oh god, was Naruto testing me? Sasuke shifted uneasily in his seat. Does he know how I feel about him? Or is he just suspicious? Beside him, Naruto sighed. You know, if you're just going to squirm throughout the movie, maybe we should do something else. Sasuke glared at him, trying to get a grip on himself. I do not squirm. Naruto snorted. Sure you don't. Lifting a hand, he flicked a finger against Sasuke's arm. Still slightly uncertain of himself, Sasuke didn't quite manage to suppress a flinch. See? Flinchy. Straightening, Naruto placed a hand on the back of Sasuke's neck, then moved to feel the boy's shoulder. He frowned. What the hell are you doing? Sasuke demanded. Turn around. What? Sasuke lifted a brow at the command. Naruto's frown deepened. I said, turn around. I want to see something. Warily, Sasuke slowly turned his back on Naruto. What is he planning? He hissed in a breath when Naruto suddenly ran his hands down the other boy's back, pausing and prodding at certain spots. Sasuke glanced over his shoulder. Naruto, what the hell? No wonder you're in such a bad mood today. Huh? Shaking his head, Naruto looked up into Sasuke's confused gaze. You're carrying so much tension in your back you might as well be a rock. Don't you ever relax? Sasuke glowered. Of course I know how to relax, I just... Naruto ran his thumbs over a knot in Sasuke's back, making him straighten. I guess you haven't really relaxed in years. He chuckled. I'd be pissy, too, if I had a back like yours. Scowling, Sasuke moved away. Thank you for that analysis, he replied sarcastically. Are we going to watch the movie or not? Later, Sasuke blinked in surprise when Naruto suddenly stood and planted his hands on his hips, glaring down at the Uchiha. On your stomach. Now, Sasuke's eyebrow lifted yet again. Excuse me? On your stomach. A malicious glint suddenly appeared in Naruto's eyes, making Sasuke feel slightly uneasy. I'm going to force you to relax. And how exactly are you planning to do that? I'm fine. Sasuke rose to his feet. And besides, it's none of your business if I... Wrong. Grinning, Naruto snagged Sasuke's arm and threw him face down onto the couch. Sputtering, Sasuke lifted his head and tried to push himself up. Naruto, what the hell are you? Oomph. Naruto promptly sat on Sasuke's hips, pushing the boy into the couch. Blushing, Sasuke tried again to push himself up, but Naruto ran his hands forward and leaned down. By the time I'm done with you, you won't be able to move, he promised. Sasuke stared at him with widened eyes for a moment before turning his face into the cushions, a nosebleed threatening to show up for the party. Naruto, he eventually spoke, his voice satisfyingly calm. Get the fuck off me. No chance, Naruto chuckled into Sasuke's ear. Leaning back up, Naruto set his hands on Sasuke's shoulders and began kneading the muscles there. Sasuke suppressed a shiver. Naruto. Look, you need this, okay? You're wound tighter than a clock. Sasuke could both hear and feel Naruto chuckle. So I've decided it's my job to unwind you. Sasuke opened his mouth to protest, but just then Naruto's fingers began massaging the taut muscles at the base of Sasuke's skull. His half-formed protest turning into a low groan, Sasuke sank against the cushions and closed his eyes. That's better, Naruto crooned. He deepened the pressure, pleased when Sasuke let out a soft sigh. Feel good? MMPH. I'll take that as a yes. Deciding not to fight it, Sasuke kept his eyes closed as Naruto's hands made their way up and down his back, gently encouraging the knotted muscles to relax. When Naruto hit a particularly tense spot, Sasuke couldn't stop himself from letting out a long, heartfelt moan. Naruto's hands paused briefly on his back. Hey, I guess you like that. Sasuke didn't bother to respond, relishing the feel of Naruto's hands on his tense muscles. A vague part of him wondered when the blonde had learned to give a massage, and how he'd become so good at it. My aunt Tsunade decided to teach me how to give massages when I was little, Naruto said softly, as though reading Sasuke's mind. She said it was one of the most valuable things a person could know how to do. Sasuke peeled open an eye and gazed at him. Did you spend a lot of time with her? He smirked. Kinda. I mostly rose myself, but she loved to pop in and dote on me for a while. Or just whack me into shape when I fell out of line. He paused, apparently in fond memory. She's pretty successful nowadays, but she keeps spending money in weird ways. First she blew her money in a casino, then she became a business executive, and now she's buying buildings and fixing them up. Naruto shook his head, returning his attention to Sasuke's back. She's a crazy old bat, but I love her anyway. And she did teach me a lot of cool stuff. Sasuke continued to look at Naruto, a little surprised to be receiving this information. For as long as he'd known Naruto, the blonde hadn't ever mentioned his family to anyone and usually avoided the subject when it came up. The fact that he was confiding in Sasuke now showed a sign of trust that hadn't been there before. Smiling lightly, Sasuke turned his face back into the cushions. Naruto fell silent as he worked on Sasuke's back. Those heavenly fingers continued kneading for a few more minutes before Naruto's weight abruptly disappeared from his back. Sasuke lifted his head, watching as Naruto moved over to Sasuke's dresser. What are you doing? Got any lotion? Sasuke gave him a slow blink. What? Lotion? Greasy scented stuff. Do you have any? Naruto began rummaging in some of the smaller drawers. Before Sasuke could open his mouth, Naruto made a noise of triumph and pulled out a tube. Bingo! Sasuke watched warily as Naruto returned to him, squeezing some of the lotion onto his hands. I don't recall giving you permission to go through my things. I don't recall asking for it. Grinning, Naruto rubbed his hands together. Now be a good boy and take your shirt off. You're kidding. Sasuke frowned as Naruto continued to grin down at him. Either you take it off or I get this all over it. Your choice. Sasuke hesitated, but the glint in Naruto's eyes left him with no doubt that Naruto would follow through with his threat. Reluctantly, he sat up and pulled his shirt off, tossing it onto the floor. He slowly laid back down when Naruto motioned for him to do so. Sasuke held his breath as Naruto settled on top of him again, then hissed as cool, slick fingers smoothed over his skin. Swallowing hard, Sasuke gripped the fabric of the cushions as Naruto's fingers alternately cooled and heated his skin. His eyes managed to stray over to the TV screen. What about the movie? Naruto glanced over at it. Oh yeah. Leaning down, and inadvertently pressing himself harder against Sasuke, which made the boy tighten his grip on the cushions, Naruto grabbed the remote and put the movie on pause. There we go. Sasuke muffled a groan with the cushions when Naruto reapplied his fingers to Sasuke's tense back. He could feel himself turning to jelly. Well, except for that one part of him that was enjoying this far too much. Letting his eyes drift closed, Sasuke allowed himself a self-satisfied smile. Let's see Neji get Naruto to offer him a back massage. 10 minutes later, Sasuke was only vaguely aware that his arms and legs hadn't dissolved into puddles on the floor. Naruto had gradually moved off his back, gently massaging the Uchiha's arms and legs until he forgot that they were supposed to be attached to him. Running a single hand along Sasuke's back, Naruto chuckled. Hey, don't you fall asleep on me now. He laughed. Hey, I'm serious. MMPH. I'm not asleep. Alright. Allowing Sasuke to remain in a pool of mush on the couch, Naruto moved over to Sasuke's side and deftly rolled the boy over. Sasuke peeled his eyes open, taking in the easy smile Naruto was sending down to him. You're taking up the whole couch, shorty, so I hope you don't mind. With that, Naruto gingerly picked up Sasuke's head, sat down, and placed it in his lap. A light blush settled on Sasuke's cheeks, but the Uchiha said nothing. Naruto smiled and bent for the remote again, putting the forgotten movie on play. Let's try this again, shall we? Sasuke thought about protesting the fact that he was using Naruto as his pillow, but for once in his life, he truly couldn't bring himself to care. He was comfortable, and besides, Naruto was the one who'd started this whole mess. Smirking, Sasuke simply shifted until he was in a better position to see the TV and watched as a small rabbit massacred a group of knights. 2.5 hours and another movie later, Naruto finally slipped out from beneath Sasuke's head and stood, stretching. I have to head down to the weight room. Do you want to come? Sasuke sat up, shaking his head. No, I'd better get started on my homework. Oh yeah, homework. That stuff. He smirked. Have fun. Sasuke rolled his eyes. Just don't expect to get answers from me tomorrow. Me? Naruto asked innocently. I would never. Sasuke gave him a dry look. Chuckling, Naruto turned and headed for the door. He glanced back upon opening it. Catch you later, Sasuke. Sasuke watched coolly as Naruto departed his room, closing the door behind him. Sighing, he lifted a hand and rubbed his shoulder. I've never felt so good in my life. You have to give him credit for having talented fingers. Blushing lightly at the thought of where else those fingers could be put to use, Sasuke stood and moved over to his desk, pulling out a physics textbook and flipping through it. It wasn't until hours later that he realized how deftly Naruto had derailed Sasuke's thoughts about being tested. Son of a gun. Come on, Gaara. Harder. Push harder. I want more. More, damn it. Gimme all you've got. I swear, if he doesn't stop saying that so suggestively, I'm going to. Grunting, Gaara struggled to lift the barbell again. Some part of his mind wondered if the bench was going to withstand the weight if he dropped it and subsequently sliced himself in two. Naruto scowled down at him, his hands between Gaara's. Is that it? You're kidding me. His scowl deepened as Gaara forced out another representative. I want 4 more from you, sissy boy. Don't. Call me. That. The redhead ground out, lowering the bar yet again. Hissing out a breath, he forced it back up. 3 more. Do it. If I survive this. He forced another representative out of his screaming muscles. He'll be the first one I kill. 2 more. Push. Toying with various ways to make Naruto pay for this, Gaara made himself go through another repetition. He gasped for air. Don't you dare quit on me now, or I'll make you start over. 1 more. Growling, Gaara lowered the bar, and forced it back up. Done. Naruto's scowl immediately transformed into a blisteringly sunny smile as he took the bar from Gaara and set it on the metal stand. Now that's what I'm talking about. Chest heaving, Gaara sat up and glared at Naruto. That was more weight than I've ever done in my life, you asshole, he ground out. That was dangerous. Oh come on, do you really think I'd allow you to get hurt? If you gave out, I'd have caught the bar before it hit you. Grinning, Naruto patted Gaara on the back. I'm proud of you, man. Gaara frowned, but his anger lessened in the face of Naruto's praise. And here I thought you found me a sissy. Haven't you ever heard of motivation? Now up. Naruto slapped Gaara's shoulder. I want to get in a few rounds. Grunting, Gaara stood and let Naruto take the bench. The blonde paused, looking at the bar for a long moment before standing and grabbing 2 25-pound weights. He slid one onto each end of the barbell, then lay down on the bench. That's better. Someone spot me. A guy standing nearby reluctantly moved to stand behind Naruto as the blonde lifted the weight free of the stand. All of the muscles in the boy's arms suddenly stood out in stark relief, and everyone, Gaara included, stared at just how developed the boy really was. Grunting, Naruto began to pump the bar up and down, moving slowly and calling out the number with each representative. His arms trembled slightly with the weight, and his cheeks puffed as he breathed. Then, he did something few had ever seen before. Instead of tiring, Naruto seemed to adjust to the new weight, his movements gaining momentum and fluidity. The numbers he called out became clearer and louder as he went. 5, 6, 7, he sped up. 8, 9, 10, 11. Gaara swallowed discreetly, watching in amazement as Naruto's muscles rippled furiously over his chest and arms, the sheen of sweat appearing on his skin. 18, 19, 20, 21. The other people in the gym stopped what they were doing and stared as Naruto went at it. 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. At that, Naruto finally began to slow down, his arms trembling lightly. 35, 36, 30, 7, 30, 8, 30, 9, 40. Gasping for air, Naruto slammed the bar back against its stand and let his arms drop to his sides. The gym erupted with applause. Naruto, that was amazing. If I hadn't seen it, I wouldn't believe it. Holy shit, man, remind me not to get on your bad side. Finally catching his breath, Naruto sat up and looked at the bar. 200 pounds. That's the most I've ever done, he panted. Gaara knew his eyes were wide when Naruto turned to look at him, but he couldn't help it. He doubted many people could even lift 200 pounds on the bench press, let alone do 40 repetitions. Naruto grinned weakly at him. Can I go sit in a corner and cry now? Wordlessly, Gaara helped him to his feet. Naruto wobbled briefly, then straightened. It's the price I pay for showing off. He winced. I wonder if I'll even be able to move my arms tomorrow. You've done that sort of thing before? Not with that much weight. Last one was a flat 200 pounds. Naruto sighed. I'm not lifting anything heavier than a pencil for a week. Gaara simply stared as Naruto began gingerly stretching out his arms. What exactly are you, Uzumaki Naruto? Naruto caught on to Gaara's stare. Hey, it's not like I can pull shit like that every day. 250 pounds is probably my limit right now, and I doubt I'll get much farther than that. He smirked. I am human, after all. Gaara grunted, following Naruto as the boy moved over to an empty bench and flopped down on it. Tuning his stare down to mild intensity, Gaara sat next to him. You seem to be burning something off, he stated. Naruto glanced at him. Huh? Were you blowing off some steam just now? To Gaara's surprise, a faint blush settled on Naruto's cheeks. The blonde looked away. Maybe. Gaara watched him for a long moment. How was the concert? Naruto blinked at him, then grinned. It was awesome. Seeing Yellow Card live. Nothing compares to that. A quiet hesitation. Did anything untoward happen? Untoward? Naruto's eyebrows shot up into his forehead. I think some fat guy in the mosh pit might have pinched my butt. Gaara's teeth clenched. Anything else? Naruto lifted a hand to scratch the back of his head, then winced at the movement. No, not that I can think of. Why? No reason. He glanced away. A smile slowly made its way onto Naruto's face. What, were you worried that Neji might take advantage of me? He laughed when Gaara's gaze snapped towards him. Man, you and Sasuke both. What's your deal with the guy, anyway? Uchiha? Gaara frowned. The Uchiha involved himself in this? Yeah, Sasuke was ready to chew nails when I told him about the concert. Naruto trailed off and his smile disappeared when Gaara's face suddenly hardened. Gaara? The redhead's eyes narrowed briefly as he rose to his feet. He glanced down at Naruto. I have matters to take care of that have just risen to my attention. Will I see you tomorrow? Yes. Naruto replied slowly, staring up at Gaara with confused eyes. He watched as Gaara curtly nodded and strode out of the gym, his jaw tense. Damn it, Hyuga was going to be enough to deal with, but Uchiha? Gaara frowned darkly. He may prove even deadlier than the other one. Thoughts wheeling in his head, Gaara strode outside, ignoring the gentle nip of the cool spring air. I'll have to take matters into my own hands. In a good mood for once, Sasuke wandered through the cafeteria in search of his elusive blonde. His eyes scanned the mass of chattering, empty-headed college students occupying the tables, but he couldn't be bothered to look at any of them. He was only after one empty-headed college student. Finally spotting Naruto's outrageously bright hair, Sasuke made his way over to the blonde. Uchiha, I wouldn't go over there. The two voices he wanted to hear least in the world gave him pause. Turning, Sasuke took in the irritated expressions on Gaara and Neji's faces. I never would have expected to see you two together, he commented, folding his arms over his chest. Neither rose to the occasion. Neji simply looked away, seemingly with disinterest, but Gaara locked gazes with the Uchiha. You're too late. I'll only warn you this once. Don't go over there. With that, the two boys left, a confused Sasuke in their wake. Frowning, Sasuke walked over to the blonde in question. He opened his mouth to speak, but his words caught in his throat. No way. Naruto glanced up at him, a huge grin on his face. His fingers were interlaced with another's over the table. Sasuke, guess what? Sasuke swallowed. What? Lee asked me out this morning. Isn't that great? He turned back to his companion, giving the exuberant, bowl-cut brunette across from him a loving smile. I was hoping he would. Lee flashed him a dazzling smile and a thumbs up. We must celebrate the springtime of youth, Naruto love. The two jumped to their feet. Let's go run 200 laps. And after that, we'll work out for 7 hours. Cheering, the two lovebirds ran out of the cafeteria towards an imagined red sunset. Completely shocked, Sasuke sank into the nearest seat. April Fools? Author's note. Gotcha. Now, for the real stuff. Enjoy. The next morning, Sasuke sat impatiently in Kakashi's class, glancing irritably at the clock. His eyes flickered to the empty seat beside him. Naruto still hasn't shown up. Sasuke frowned as the clock ticked away, closing down on the time left in class. It's not like him to skip this class. Did he sleep in? Kakashi's words drifted in one ear and out the other as Sasuke automatically took notes, his mind of yesterday's events. I wonder if Naruto really was testing me yesterday. It certainly seems like it. His frown deepened, but that certainly doesn't seem to be a Naruto brand response. If he thought I was interested, wouldn't he just say so? He answered a question when Kakashi called on him to do so, but if asked later, he couldn't have said what either the question or the answer was about. His expression tightened sternly. Or was he just teasing me again? When the class was finally dismissed, Sasuke gathered his books and stalked out of the lecture hall. I swear, if he was, I'm going to. Uchiha. Stopping dead in his tracks, Sasuke turned to spot a redhead leaning against the wall. Gaara. He frowned, turning to face the boy who was staring at him with such intensity. He lifted a brow in question when Gaara didn't say anything. What is your relationship with Uzumaki Naruto? Gaara abruptly questioned, his face impassive. Sasuke blinked, not quite expecting that. He smirked, folding his arms over his chest. Why do you want to know? He challenged. Gaara's gaze grew colder, but he remained relaxed against the wall. That's not important. Answer the question. Sasuke's smirk disappeared. Don't give me orders. His expression unchanging, Gaara slowly straightened up off the wall and stepped forward. Sasuke tensed, his hands dropping to his sides. Stay away from him, Uchiha, Gaara stated, his voice soft but intense. Though his face remained calm, his eyes took on a dangerous glint. That is an order. Anger ran through Sasuke's veins, and he clenched his fists. His own face darkened in response to Gaara's. You can't intimidate me, he stated calmly. The two stared each other down, neither giving an inch. The air between them grew so charged that a fly wandering by would be vaporized. Eventually, Gaara smirked. We'll see, Uchiha. With that, Gaara passed Sasuke and calmly walked away, his dismissal of the brunette clear. Sasuke clenched his fists, but he schooled his face into a mask of indifference as he walked away, his angry thoughts roiling in his mind. That bastard dared to threaten me? I'll do as I damn well please. His expression became thunderous, and the unlucky people who had to look him in the face as he walked along ducked their heads nervously and skittered out of his way. How many suitors does Naruto have? Sasuke's mood hadn't improved by the time he made it to his room, and his lock took the brunt of his abuse as he jammed the key into the metal contraption. Wow. Remind me to disarm you whenever you're in a bad mood. Glancing up, Sasuke turned to see Naruto strolling forward. The boy was dressed in a faded yellow shirt, blue jean bib overalls, brown boots, and green gardening gloves. And he was covered from head to toe in dirt. What happened to you? Sasuke questioned after taking him in. Why weren't you at class? Class? Naruto blinked at him in confusion before his face cleared. Oh, damn. Class. I totally forgot. Naruto slapped his forehead in his consternation, resulting in a huge smear of dirt. Sasuke smothered a smile. What the hell were you doing that got you so dirty? Naruto stared blankly at him just long enough for Sasuke to begin to wonder. The blonde's face slid into an easy smile. I got a little carried away today in horticulture. Horticulture? Sasuke lifted an eyebrow. during European history? It's for a project, Sasuke, Naruto replied dryly. It's due kinda soon, and I forgot about class, alright? Case closed. Not quite convinced, Sasuke watched as Naruto peeled off his gloves, unlocked his door, and glanced back at the Uchiha. What? Why are you looking at me like that? Sasuke thought about questioning him further, but he chose to lean back against the wall instead. I hope you don't expect me to give you today's notes just because you flaked out. As expected, Naruto's face immediately scrunched up. Ah, come on, it was an honest mistake. Sasuke just looked at him. Groaning, Naruto tipped his head up to the ceiling. If I can't get them from you, who the hell am I supposed to ask? Sasuke considered him for a long, quiet moment. I'll give them to you, on one condition. What? We do all of the research for our project together. In my room. Sasuke wondered at his boldness as Naruto's eyebrows shot up. Was that too much? Immediately, he thought of Gaara's threat and Neji's date. No, definitely not too much. Alright. Naruto answered slowly, looking at Sasuke like he expected him to announce that he was an alien and wanted to suck Naruto's brain out. We could do that. Sasuke smirked, a sense of triumph floating through him. First step in the right direction. Naruto turned to enter his room, then glanced back at Sasuke. Hey, could you come here a sec? I want to show you something. Obligingly, Sasuke stepped away from the wall and followed Naruto into his room, lifting an eyebrow when Naruto casually kicked the door closed behind them. Naruto wandered over to his desk, squatting down and opening the bottom drawer. Sasuke let his eyes wander appreciatively over Naruto's back and butt as the overalls tightened. What did you want to show me? I ran across something earlier, and I forgot to show you. Standing, and inadvertently disappointing Sasuke, Naruto turned and smiled at the Uchiha. Picking up the other boy's hand, he pressed a piece of metal into it. Confused, Sasuke glanced down at his hand. A gold pendant featuring a snake about to strike gleamed in the center of his palm. This is the necklace I wore in middle school, he stated slowly. Naruto smirked. Yeah, the one from when you felt you had to be an ass to everyone about everything. The one I tore off you when we fought so badly, both of us ended up in the hospital. Sasuke slowly tore his eyes off the pendant to look up at Naruto. You kept it? Yeah, I always figured I'd give it back when you'd earned it by not being such a bastard. He smirked. I'm still not sure you're ready for it, but what the hell? It was yours to begin with, wasn't it? Sasuke stared at him, then back down at the jewelry. The snake's gleaming fangs reminded him of who he used to be. A guy who was certain that the only way to live was by staying constantly on the offensive, letting no one get close to him without ending up pumped full of venom. It had been a self-destructive lifestyle, one that had nearly led to him killing himself until Naruto found him, beat the shit out of him, and threatened to kill him himself if Sasuke ever tried it again. After that, Sasuke hadn't immediately accepted the fact that he was changing, but he had, steadily. Now, looking back on it, he couldn't believe that his outlook on life had ever been so bleak. He didn't look up as Naruto stepped past him, but his voice softly drifted into the air. How do you do it? Naruto turned to look at him. Do what? Change people. The way you do. Sasuke ran his fingers over the metal. You changed Neji, changed Gaara, and even saved me from myself. His face unreadable, he finally looked over at the blonde. How do you do it? Naruto looked down, his features solemn. I know I don't act like it, he began slowly, but I went through that same kind of self-condemning thing myself as a kid. I couldn't stand it, and I couldn't stand myself. He glanced up, his eyes suddenly fierce. Later, I couldn't stand to see people like you three just accept that the world was a horrible place. I made my world better, so what the fuck was stopping you? He turned away, his broad shoulders tense. I had to prove you guys wrong, or else everything I'd come to believe about myself was a lie. Silence settled thickly in the room. Abruptly, Naruto glanced back at him and smirked. I should have known I was right all along. Sasuke stared at him for a long moment before cracking a smile. For once, yeah, I guess you were. Naruto flashed him a fox grin. Hey, so, now that that's settled. Looking down, Naruto unsnapped the buttons holding up his overalls and let them drop. Sasuke choked as Naruto also shrugged out of his shirt, now standing in nothing but his boxers. Face red, he couldn't stop himself from staring shamelessly at Naruto's toned body. What the hell are you doing? Getting ready to take a shower, he stated calmly, rolling up his clothes and walking to his hamper like nothing out of the ordinary was happening. Glancing over at Sasuke, he gave him an odd look. You okay there, buddy? He tore his eyes away, looking steadfastly to the side. Do you have no shame? Naruto blinked at him. It is my room, and the door is shut, Sasuke. It's not like I'm putting on a show. But I'm here. Naruto shrugged. So? I do it in front of Kiba, and he doesn't care. Kiba doesn't want to jump you. It's not the same, he ground out. Naruto simply rolled his eyes. Whatever. I'll stop offending your virgin eyes. Stepping into the bathroom and shutting the door, he called out, didn't you ever change in the locker room at school? It's not the same, Sasuke repeated, beginning to feel slightly foolish. He swore he heard Naruto mutter, sissy, before the spray of water from the shower turned on. Taking a deep breath, Sasuke sat on the edge of Naruto's bed. Do you want me to stay or leave? He called out after some thought. There was a moment of silence from the shower. Stay, Naruto decided. If you leave, I'd probably have to get out and lock the door. Trying desperately not to imagine Naruto in the shower. Or joining Naruto in the shower. Damn, now he needed a tissue. Sasuke looked around the blonde's room. Snagging a tissue and pressing it to his nose, he stood and moved to study some of the posters and pictures Naruto had put up. Naruto had decorated his side of the room very eclectically, scattering anime merchandise, pictures of nature, and pictures of friends all over the walls. With some satisfaction, Sasuke noted that he appeared in a lot of the photos, though he was hardly alone. He recognized Sakura, who had dated Naruto for a very short time when they were younger, in several shots. Musing over this, Sasuke crumpled the bloodied tissue and tossed it into the trash. He wandered over to Naruto's desk, which had an open notebook on it. Picking it up, he started to peruse its contents. It's a journal, Sasuke realized as he turned the pages, but not a normal one. It looks like he filled it with random observations he made throughout the day. Intrigued, he read some of the passages. October 4, 2004. I mentioned the Europeans in genetics today, and Dr. Amino blushed a little, even though I wasn't talking to him. I thought about it, and made a passing comment about Dr. Hitaki as I left the class. He blushed again. I think he has a thing for him. December 6, 2004. I talked to Sakura today at lunch. She must have put herself on a diet again, since she steered clear of all carbs today. I'll bet she's trying to make herself thinner for Sasuke, but you know, I brought him up during the conversation and it took her a second before reacting. I don't think she realizes it, but she probably doesn't like him as much as she wishes she does. December 12, 2004. Aunt Tsunade called me today, wondering if I was going to be okay for Christmas, since she just found out that she couldn't spend it with me. Two things. 1. I think she's feeling guilty about not always being there for me, and 2. I think she blew all of her money gambling again and she's stuck in Vegas trying to work up enough money to make it home. Not that she'd ever say so. January 1, 2005. I was right about Sakura. She just admitted to me today that her crush on Sasuke wasn't as strong as she thought it was. Swish. Nothing but net. Sasuke was surprised. In these musings, Naruto had apparently picked up on a lot of little details that some people would miss. In fact, he realized as he read some of the other passages, it looked like Naruto noticed almost everything going on around him. He didn't always draw a conclusion from his observations, often missing the final point until it was made blindingly obvious to everyone concerned, but the fact remained that Naruto still picked up on it. Why does he act so oblivious, then? It's obvious that even when he doesn't connect point A and B, he has a vague idea of what's going on. Frowning, Sasuke started to flip forward to Naruto's more current entries. I wonder what he wrote about me. Having fun? Stiffening, Sasuke closed the journal. He turned around, ready to be reamed out for invading Naruto's priva. Oh dear God. Sasuke's heart skipped a beat and his tongue dried out when he saw Naruto standing before him, clad only in a blue towel wrapped loosely around his waist. The blonde rubbed his hair with another towel, unknowingly showing off the muscles in his chest as he did so. He stared at the notebook in Sasuke's hands. You know, I never would have thought you were the kind of guy who'd read someone else's journal, he stated dryly. Hanging the second towel about his neck, he walked forward and took the book from Sasuke's slackened grip. Next time, could you at least ask for permission? It would have taken more brainpower than Sasuke currently had to respond, occupied as he was with staring at Naruto. With his blonde hair wet and tiny rivulets of water running down his sun-kissed skin, the boy looked slick, steamy, and just overall delicious. Sasuke had to remind himself to keep breathing, the ability to look away long since lost to him. God, if I touched him now. I just know he's not wearing anything under that towel. Where did that tissue run off to? Hello, Sasuke? You in there? Blinking, Sasuke managed to focus on the hand Naruto was waving in front of his face. He stared at Naruto's face, fighting the instinct to just reach out, throw the blonde onto the bed, and have his way with him. I'm sorry, he finally replied, realizing what Naruto was waiting for. The blonde lifted an eyebrow at him, so he cleared his throat and continued. I wouldn't have gone through it, but your entries were interesting. Interesting? Naruto blinked in surprise. How so? I hadn't realized you were so observant. Oh, that's because I'm usually not until I get it down on paper. He set the notebook back on his desk. Aunt Tsunade suggested that I keep a journal and write what I noticed about people throughout the day so that I'd stop being such a dumbass. Sasuke smirked, fighting to keep his eyes on Naruto's face. It didn't work. And the mighty Uchiha cracks a joke, Naruto replied sarcastically. I'll have to put that one down immediately. Sasuke rolled his eyes. Are you going to put your clothes on? He heard himself ask. Shaking his head, Naruto moved past him and headed for his dresser. Prude. Sasuke decided not to comment, forcing himself to look away while Naruto made himself presentable. At least once he's dressed, I can think normally. Not to mention the fact that I'll be able to keep myself from jumping him, theoretically. All right, Uchiha, it's safe to look. Sasuke glanced over at him, both relieved and sorely disappointed that Naruto was fully clad in a t-shirt and jeans. You're an exhibitionist, aren't you? No, I just don't care, he flippantly replied. Moving forward, he gathered his books. I have to kick you out now. I have genetics in 15 minutes. Nodding briefly, Sasuke dutifully preceded Naruto out into the hall, then waited as he locked his door. Come to my room after class, if you can, he requested abruptly. We'll get moving on our paper. Alright, I might be a bit late, though. Sasuke lifted an eyebrow. Why's that? Because I need to have a little chat with Neji. Smiling, he waved at the startled Uchiha. Catch you later. Before Sasuke could formulate a reply, Naruto was already gone. Book bag slung over his shoulder, Naruto wandered into his genetics class. His eyes automatically scanned for the pale-eyed Hyuga, and he smiled lightly when he spotted the boy among the middle rows in the lecture hall. Neji was already watching him, and he gave a soft nod of acknowledgement when Naruto waved. Okay, Naruto thought as he snagged an empty seat up front. He probably hasn't realized that I know what really happened yesterday. Sighing lightly, he pulled out his notebook and opened to an empty page. I really hate to shoot him down, but I can't afford to have him think that he can just get away with stuff like that. I'm not into him that way, though he wishes I was. Naruto thought about that for a moment, then snorted at the double entendre. Throughout class, he could feel Neji's gaze burning into his back. He didn't bother to turn around, since he was sure Neji would have looked away before he got his head all the way around, but it made him feel slightly uncomfortable. How long has this been going on, anyway? Frowning, Naruto thought back through his other run-ins with the proud Hyuga. Now, he could pick up on several occasions when Neji had been overly protective, had seemed to be watching him, or had seemed to favor him over everyone else. The first time through, he'd assumed it was because Neji liked him. Not because Neji liked him. The other possibility simply hadn't occurred to him. Of course, that also went for Sasuke. His reaction yesterday showed that Sasuke was at least attracted to him. Now it was just a question of how much feeling backed that up. Chewing lightly on the end of his pencil, Naruto decided that Sasuke's jealousy alone, and it was jealousy, no doubt about that, didn't really establish any sort of real affection for him. Sasuke always was a possessive bastard. Naruto scowled at a problem on misplaced jeans before setting down his pencil. And then there's Gaara. I can't tell if the guy just has a mother hen instinct towards me or if he's another one I'll have to worry about. Or is that my ego talking? He leaned back in his seat and decided to count ceiling tiles until he was either called on or class was dismissed. Oh well, first things first, where should I take Neji? About a half hour and 126 ceiling tiles later, Uruka, he'd told them all to call him that the first day, since Dr. Amino sounded so formal. He then proceeded to blush the first few times he was addressed, decided to dismiss them. Standing, Naruto flagged down Neji. "Hey, do you have a minute?" The Hyuga lifted an eyebrow. "Yes." Naruto shifted, stuffing his hands in his pockets. "I want to talk to you. Somewhere private." Clearly surprised, Neji gave him a short nod and followed him out of the genetics building. He watched Naruto curiously as they crossed the street. "What is this about?" he asked at length. Naruto glanced at him, then down the road as he waited for a car to pass before crossing the next intersection. "I think you know, Neji," he answered. After a few minutes, he added, "I've been thinking things over since Saturday." "I see." Neji fell silent. As Naruto's dorm came into view, Neji looked curiously at him. "Where are we going?" "My room." "Your room? It's the only place I can think of where we can talk without someone listening in." He sent Neji a sidelong glance. "Your fan club has spies everywhere. I don't want to get mauled by some foaming at the bit psycho girl." Neji smirked. "What makes you think I would let them? You can't be everywhere at once, man. Sooner or later, they'd catch me." He shuddered. "Swinging by my toes from the roof doesn't sound appealing, thank you very much." Chuckling, Neji looked ahead. "Your room it is, then." A part of Naruto's brain was waving red flags, blowing whistles and running around in circles with a banner saying, "Bad idea." He chose to ignore it. Neither boy said anything as they made their way up to the third floor and walked past the multitude of open doors and the few shut ones that declared, "Damn it, you guys. Can't I ever study here? Shut up," on dry erase boards. Pulling out his keys, Naruto unlocked his door and let them in, tossing his bag down. Per his habit, he kicked the door shut. He didn't notice the door opening a few rooms down the hall. "Okay, Neji, I wanted to talk to you about that concert." Moving forward, he sat heavily on the edge of his bed and looked up at the pale Hyuga. Neji frowned. "What about it? Was that?" He hesitated, then continued warily. "Was that a date?" Neji was silent for a long time before he answered. "Yes, it was. I figured." Sighing, Naruto leaned back and placed his hands behind him. "You know that I had no idea, right? Hell, I didn't even know you liked me. And now?" Naruto gave him a dry look. "Well, it's pretty damn obvious now." He blushed lightly and looked away. "Especially after that kiss on the cheek," he added quietly. After a moment, Neji sat beside him. "Did I offend you?" "What?" Naruto blinked at him. "No, it's nothing like that, but it was one of the most out-of-the-blue moments of my life." "How long have you felt that way?" Apparently unsure of whether this was a good conversation or a bad one, Neji slowly replied, "Since middle school." Naruto's eyes bugged out. "That long?" His jaw fell slightly slack as Neji simply looked at him. "Why didn't you tell me?" The other boy gave a gentle shrug. "I didn't think there was a point. You obviously didn't feel the same way about me." Naruto lifted an eyebrow, slightly unnerved both by how much information the Hyuga was giving out and by how intensely he was now being stared at. "And, what changed, exactly?" After a moment's consideration, Neji leaned closer. "I decided not to wait any longer," he replied, his voice low. Red alerts, tornado warnings, and SWAT teams were now going on a rampage through Naruto's mind. Smiling weakly, he started to lean away. "Oh okay, but, Neji, you what?" Neji had moved closer again, his eyelids lowered to half-mast. Nervously, Naruto tried to shift away. "You A blush lit his face as he realized he was running out of places to go. "Look, Neji, about that kiss Saturday night. I missed." "What?" Naruto's blush increased when Neji suddenly lifted his hand to cup the blonde's cheek. "Ooh, this was so a bad idea. Wait a minute, Neji, this isn't what and I plan to make up for that." Before Naruto could protest, Neji's lips were soundly locked onto his. The motion made him lose his balance, and he fell backwards against the bed, breaking the kiss. He had an instant to look up at Neji before the other boy's eyes narrowed and he leaned forward, slipping his tongue into Naruto's mouth. This was so a bad idea. Arms flailing, Naruto tried to find purchase among his bedclothes as Neji fisted his hand in his hair, rocking his mouth over Naruto's with determination. Another of Neji's hands found its way up Naruto's shirt, making his stomach muscles jump. Sucking in a sharp breath through his nose, Naruto slid a hand between them and pushed at Neji's chest. When the boy refused to move, Naruto had to stiff-arm him away, blessing every moment he'd spent in the gym. Panting, he glared up at Neji. Now hold on a damn minute. I don't know where you got the wrong idea, but… He trailed off as he realized that his door, which he had definitely closed, was wide open. The color draining from his face, he let his eyes move over to the boy who was now standing feet away, looking like he was ready to destroy something. Sasuke. Naruto swallowed, only one thought going through his mind. Oh, shit, he brought Neji to his room? Scowling, Sasuke stepped out of his doorway and strode over to Naruto's closed door. A nagging feeling was tugging at his stomach like a little kid saying, "The bad man's in there. Can we go kick his ass now?" Uncertain of whether or not he should be doing anything, Sasuke slowly opened the door to Naruto's room. And saw red. His mind registered only 3 things. 1. Neji was kissing his Naruto. 2. Naruto was protesting. 3. He was going to kill Neji. Right now. Blood rushed in his ears as he stalked forward, his fists clenching and unclenching involuntarily. Naruto spotted him, and the boy's lips moved, but Sasuke couldn't hear what he was saying. His eyes were glued to the Hyuga's face as the other boy looked over at him, annoyance and irritation written plainly on his noble face. "I'll show him a friggin' NNOYED. His teeth grinding furiously, Sasuke managed to force the words, "Get off him," out of his throat. Now, Neji glared at him. "I don't recall this involving you, Uchiha. Leave." Pleasant little visions of tearing Neji's head off and setting it on fire danced through Sasuke's mind. His voice darkened dangerously. "Get off." His eyes disdainful, Neji began to dismiss him, turning back to the suspiciously quiet blonde beneath him. Sasuke swore he heard something snap. His body moving on its own, Sasuke stormed forward, grabbed a fistful of Neji's hair, yanked hard, and planted his fist in Neji's face. Neji stumbled off the bed and swiped at his lip. With one hand reaching back to touch his scalp, he narrowed his eyes at Sasuke and scowled viciously. Translation. Game over. Before Sasuke could blink, Neji launched himself at him, ramming a fist into Sasuke's gut. The Uchiha doubled over, but he lifted one hand and slammed the heel of his palm into Neji's chin. Straightening, he threw a right hook aimed for Neji's nose. Dodging the blow, Neji snagged Sasuke's arm, twisted it, and plowed his knee into Sasuke's stomach. Sasuke staggered back, giving Neji just enough time to start smirking before he let out an inhuman growl and tackled him to the floor. Hey, wait a minute. Guys. Naruto's voice went in one ear and out the other as the two rolled on the ground, punches connecting sporadically. Sasuke's world had shrunk to this one asshole and his very pressing need to eliminate him. A fist connected at the corner of his eye, sending stars across Sasuke's vision. Growling, he rolled over, managed to pin one of Neji's arms beneath him, and planted 3 solid punches in the Hyuga's immaculate face. Guys, stop it. Pushing Sasuke off him, Neji rolled over and slammed his elbow into Sasuke's collarbone. Sasuke let out a gasp of pain, then caught Neji across the cheek with the back of his left fist. "Are you two listening to me?" Grunting, Neji kicked at Sasuke, flinging the two of them apart. The two gasped for air, staggering to their feet and preparing to charge at each other again. "Alright, that does it." Before Sasuke knew what was happening, a solid fist snagged the front of his shirt, another seized Neji's, and the two boys were hauled out of the room. The two stumbled awkwardly behind the blonde as he pulled them out into the hall, turned, and slammed them against the wall. "I said stop it." Sasuke had to fight to get his breath back as he stared at the flushed blonde pinning both him and Neji to the wall. The two stared and panted as Naruto glared at them. "Are you two insane? Jesus Christ." Satisfied that their attention was on him, Naruto released them and stepped back. He looked at Neji first. "I think you'd better go. We'll talk about this later." When Neji lifted an eyebrow at him, Naruto frowned. "But don't think you got away with planting that kiss on me. We're definitely going to discuss it." Neji frowned at that, then winced lightly at the pull on his injured lip. He gave Naruto a wary look, then turned and silently made his way down the hall. After watching him leave, Naruto turned back to Sasuke, who was busy mentally throwing daggers and acid at Neji's retreating back. Without saying a word, Naruto closed his door, snagged Sasuke's arm, and pulled the Uchiha towards his room. Sasuke scowled at him, pulling his arm away. "Why the fuck did you get in my way?" Naruto stared at him, his expression incredulous. "What, was I supposed to let you and Neji? Don't say his name in front of me. Beat each other to a pulp in the middle of my floor? Get real." Sasuke clenched his fists tightly. "Are you saying that you'd rather I did nothing? I had control of the situation. He was lying on top of you. It's not like I wanted him there. Then why the fuck did you let him into your room? Dumbass. Why the fuck do you care, Sasuke?" Sasuke's words caught in his throat mid-tirade, and he let out a squawk before closing his mouth. He stared at Naruto as his chest heaved, their faces brought close together by their argument. Naruto's face soured at Sasuke's lack of response. "Well, answer the damn question. Why do you care so fucking much about what happens to me, Uchiha?" Gritting his teeth, Sasuke looked away. "Is it a crime?" he ground out. "What? Is it a crime?" Incensed again, Sasuke glared at Naruto head-on. "Is it a crime that I care? Is it in your fucking notebook that I'm not allowed to?" Naruto frowned at that. "I don't write about you, Sasuke." The raven-haired boy blinked. "What? I don't write about you?" Silence filled the air between them for a long moment as Sasuke digested what he'd been told. Naruto looked away. "I don't write about you specifically because I don't want to analyze you. I don't want to sit at my desk and try to figure out what makes you tick. You're too complex, Sasuke." Sasuke's eyebrows furrowed. Unable to determine if his absence in Naruto's notes was a good sign or a bad one, he remained silent. "I don't." Naruto paused. "A lot of the time, I don't get you. You act like you can't stand me, then you leap to my defense, then we're buddies, and then we're right back to being enemies." He ran a frustrated hand through his hair. "I don't know what to expect from you." Sasuke looked away. "Maybe I don't know what to expect either, Naruto. You've turned my world upside down. What am I supposed to do?" After a long moment of silence, Sasuke felt Naruto punch him lightly on the arm. Glancing back at him, he was surprised to see a small smile on Naruto's face. "Look, I'll go get my stuff, and we'll get to work on that damn project. Let's just put everything else on the back burner for now, alright?" Slowly, Sasuke's lips curled upwards. Alright. The next few hours went by uneventfully, dredging up sources and plotting out how their report should go. After about 20 minutes of hovering over Sasuke at the computer, Naruto decided to flop onto the couch and flip through one of the history books they collected. An hour later, the blonde was sound asleep. Sasuke shook his head at Naruto's sleeping form, the book lying face down on his chest and his lips parted. A small smile on his face, Sasuke debated whether or not to wake the blonde idiot up. I wonder what he has to be so tired about. Upon closer inspection, signs of exhaustion were clear on Naruto's face. Is he stressed about something? Smirking, Sasuke snorted. No way. Naruto doesn't know the meaning of stress. His smirk was replaced by a contemplative frown. But what is it then? Unable to come up with a plausible reason, Sasuke quietly stood and slipped out of the room. He patted down the hall in his socks, coming to Naruto's door and testing the lock. It swung open. Kiba glanced up from his bed, headphones covering his ears. Lifting one away, he lifted an eyebrow at Sasuke. "Can I help you? I think Naruto left a history book in here that we need," Sasuke stated shortly, beginning to rummage through the mild disaster zone that was Naruto's desk. "And he couldn't come get it himself because he's passed out on my couch." Finding the book, Sasuke turned to leave. "I wonder if he's so tired because of that horticulture project this morning." "Horticulture?" Kiba asked as Sasuke headed out the room. "Naruto doesn't take horticulture." Sasuke stopped dead in his tracks. He slowly looked over his shoulder at the spiky-haired brunette behind him. "What do you mean, Naruto doesn't take horticulture? He's loaded down with science and humanities courses right now. He isn't taking it." Kiba frowned. "I don't think that's even in his major." Sasuke said nothing, eventually turning and striding out of the room. "Naruto lied to me? What does he have to hide?" His eyebrows furrowed. And where the hell was he this morning? Quietly, Sasuke let himself back into his room, staring at the blonde sprawled on his couch. "What are you hiding from me, Naruto?" Setting the book on his desk, Sasuke moved over to crouch beside Naruto. He wasn't snoring, but he was breathing that deep, slightly loud breath that stops just shy of actual snoring. It was a clear sign that Naruto wasn't just exhausted. The boy sounded like he needed this rest more than anything else right now. Frowning, Sasuke lifted a hand and ghosted it over Naruto's face, not quite touching the blonde's skin. You say I'm complex, Naruto, but for a guy who wears his heart on his sleeve, you're amazingly hard to figure out. His frown increased. I don't know how you feel about me, what you're thinking. I can't tell the difference between when you're joking and when you're serious. What's going on in that mind of yours? Growing slightly bolder, Sasuke let his fingers slide over Naruto's cheek, pushing back the blonde hair that had fallen over his face. Naruto continued sleeping soundly, so Sasuke allowed his thumb to gently rub back and forth, caressing the odd markings on Naruto's cheek. A sense of possessiveness surged within him. I won't let anyone take you away from me. I want to know what you're really thinking, what you're really feeling behind that smile, and I don't want anyone else to know it. Sasuke leaned forward, his face inches from Naruto's. I want you to come to me with your problems. I want you to think of me before you fall asleep and after you awake in the morning. Placing his other hand on Naruto's jaw and cradling the boy's face, Sasuke closed his eyes and planted his lips on Naruto's. I want you to love me. Waves of tingling heat swept through him at the feel of Naruto's soft lips against his own. Inhaling sharply through his nose and reveling at the intoxicating scent that filled his senses, Sasuke gently moved his lips upon Naruto's, capturing and recapturing the boy's lips between his own. A hint of Naruto's taste snuck into Sasuke's mouth, and heat began to pool in his stomach. Swallowing, Sasuke shifted closer, leaning a little of his weight on Naruto's chest. Nipping at Naruto's lips, he felt them give way beneath him, and he instinctively took advantage. Slipping his tongue into Naruto's mouth, Sasuke gripped the blonde's hair and pushed closer, a craving for more of the boy's flavor coiling tightly within him. He explored Naruto's mouth with bold strokes of his tongue, reveling in the friction of Naruto's tongue against his own. A tightening in Sasuke's groin made him shift even more of his weight upon the blonde's chest. Sasuke's world narrowed for the second time that day, all of his senses focused on getting more of Naruto, of consuming him. Letting out a soft noise of pleasure, Sasuke changed the angle of his attack, his eyelids lifting slightly to gaze down at the blonde with smoky eyes. A pair of blue eyes was staring back at him. Freezing, Sasuke's eyes flew wide as he stared into Naruto's half-lidded gaze. Swallowing hard, Sasuke pulled back and stared down at the blonde. Naruto blinked slowly, his face impassive. Why did you do that? Naruto asked slowly, his voice low. His eyes remained at that half-masked state as he stared unflinchingly at the brunette. Sasuke's face went pale. What am I supposed to say? Because I'm attracted to you? Because I like you? No reason, you just look tasty? Naruto waited patiently as Sasuke struggled with a response. After a minute, he made a low noise deep in his throat. Until you can answer that question, don't do it again, he stated firmly. With that, he rolled onto the side away from Sasuke. A second later, he mumbled, "What is it with you guys and kissing me?" A few seconds later, Naruto was almost snoring again. Sasuke sat at Naruto's side, blinking in confusion and surprise. What kind of reaction was that? Naruto? Frowning, Sasuke stood and peered into the blonde's face. Naruto? No response. Utterly lost, Sasuke rubbed the back of his head. If I didn't know better, I'd say that he was asleep through all of that. His frown growing, he shook the blonde's shoulder. Naruto, wake up, MMPH? Wha? Lifting his head, Naruto blinked blearily at him. What do you want, Sasuke? Sasuke just stared at him. Naruto, were you asleep just now? The blonde glowered at him. I was until just now, you asshole. Waving a hand, he shooed Sasuke away. Now go away. I'm tired. And, just as before, Naruto went right back to sleep. After a long moment, Sasuke decided not to press his luck and returned to his desk, flipping through the books with little hope of actually concentrating. Was he really asleep? About 2 hours later, Naruto stirred on the couch. The boy sat up, stretched his hands up over his head and yawned mightily. Rubbing his eyes, he looked at Sasuke. How long was I out? Sasuke glanced over at him, though he was fully aware of every movement Naruto had made. About 2.5 hours. Naruto grunted. Sorry, man, I didn't realize I was so tired. He stood, stretching again. Want me to take a turn at the computer? if you want to. Gathering his notes, Sasuke abandoned the seat and let Naruto flop gracelessly into it. He watched as Naruto shook his head as though trying to wake himself up more, then leaned forward and frowned at the computer screen with vaguely unfocused eyes. Do you have trouble waking up, Naruto? He grunted. Only when I'm really tired. I'll sleep through anything. Smiling sheepishly, he ran a hand through his hair and looked up at Sasuke. I once managed to get up, get all the way to class, and still not wake up until it was over. And you, looked awake? He chuckled lightly, turning back to the computer. Yeah, apparently. Kiba calls it the half-lidded gaze of doom. He shook his head. I'll probably walk into a moving bus next time. Sasuke looked away, so he really was asleep. A large part of him was relieved, since that meant that Naruto didn't know that Sasuke had kissed him. Another part of him was frustrated for the same reason. After a second, Naruto turned to look at him. Why do you ask, anyway? Did I wake up, or something? Sasuke hesitated. Yes, he slowly replied. Once. Naruto chuckled at the expression on Sasuke's face. What, did I say something weird or embarrassing? Sasuke smiled lightly. No, not exactly. Then what did I do? His interest caught, he turned to face Sasuke. I can tell by your expression that I did something. Sasuke coughed into his hand. Nothing. Naruto lifted an eyebrow. Nothing? That's what I said. Clearly unconvinced, Naruto turned back to the computer screen. I'll wheedle it out of you eventually, you know. Sasuke smirked, a faint blush coloring his cheeks. I doubt that. You're remarkable, Naruto. You truly are. That evening, Naruto returned to his room. He kicked the door shut, unintentionally waking Kiba from the light doze he'd been in. Naruto smiled apologetically. Sorry, man, I didn't realize you were here. Kiba grunted, resettling himself on his bed. Your boyfriend was in here earlier. Naruto blinked at him in surprise. What, Sasuke? He came in while you were sleeping on his couch. Oh, why didn't you say so? Naruto asked, slight irritation coloring his voice. What did he want? A book or some stupid thing? Kiba snorted abruptly. He said something about you taking horticulture, though. You. Naruto froze. Kiba, what did you tell Sasuke? The boy looked curiously at Naruto. I told him you weren't taking it. How he could believe that you of all people would muddle around with plants for any extended period of time. Kiba trailed off when Naruto let out a hearty groan, sat on the edge of his bed, and buried his face in his hands. Naruto? Damn it, he bought that story, too. He looked up, his expression annoyed. Thanks a bunch, Kiba. Wait, you told him you were taking it? He blinked when Naruto just glowered at him. Why? None of your beeswax, the blonde grumbled. Moving over to his desk, Naruto pulled out his notebook and started writing. Curious, Kiba sat up. What are you writing about now? Well, given what you just told me, a lot officially happened today. Naruto frowned as he wrote. I should get it down. Kiba nodded, then flopped down on his stomach across his bed, his arms and legs hanging off the sides. So, how'd your chat with Neji go? Naruto stilled, then looked over at him. How do you know about that? Oh, please. I've roomed with you for how long now? There's no way you'd let Neji get in a smacker without confronting him over it. To Kiba's surprise, Naruto turned bright red and looked away. He sat up immediately. Naruto, what happened this time? Naruto coughed into his hand. Nothing. Really. You're a horrible liar. Kiba placed a hand on the blonde's shoulder and leaned forward to peer into his face. Naruto was the color of a tomato, something that very rarely happened. Straightening, he shook his head. What, did he push you down and have his way with you or something? He started to laugh, but Naruto's flinch cut him off. No way. You're kidding me. In our room? Nothing like that happened, Kiba. Sheesh. Mortified, Naruto stared at the floor. Just the pushing me down part. And you let him? Are those muscles for show? I wasn't expecting it. Naruto snapped. How the hell was I supposed to know he was going to? He trailed off, then looked away and grimaced. Okay, so I should have known something like that was going to happen. That doesn't mean I'm going to let it happen again. Kiba patted him on the arm. You keep telling yourself that, buddy. Naruto gave him a sour look before turning back to his notebook. Gnawing on his pencil, he sighed. I wonder what I'm going to tell Sasuke next time. He already knows I lied, but he didn't bring it up. He grimaced. If he wasn't suspicious before, he is now. After a moment, he closed his notebook. He won't find out. I'll make sure of it. With a gentle smirk, Naruto pulled out his homework and got started. I'll just have you muddle about in the dark for a while, Sasuke-kun. That's all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.